After having a fight with her parents, this blonde adventurer girl decides to run away from home for the weekend and indulge in her hobby. She arrives at what appears to be a palace or guild building, and the staff member tells her to submit her card and fill out the palace entry form. Then she climbs up a ladder, her expression focused and determined as she makes her way up. Suddenly, a massive solo dungeon entrance comes into view, built into the side of a cliff with ornate architecture. The structure stands imposing against the rocky mountainside. The location is revealed to be Sagu, a beginner-friendly dungeon. The place is designed for gatherer and hunter-type adventurers to earn some money, and beginners who just became adventurers can gain experience here. The guild staff keeps everything well managed so there's little danger. In the upper levels, there are even sightseeing tour. The girl notes there are quite a few people who visit just for fun, like herself. A staff member asks if she'd like to use the elevator, but she requests a half-rude card instead. No matter how many times she comes here, she still can't get used to it. Even if this place reminds her that it's a different world, just one step inside and a completely different magical pressure and atmosphere from the outside weighs down on her. This exploration is scheduled for 2 days. She plans to dive to the lowest floor and camp there for the night. She reviews her full equipment set, which includes magic boots and a magic bag, along with supplies like a tent, sleeping bag, food, water, and various enchanted tools. Sagu has a total of 13 floors, and there's a transfer elevator that goes up to the 8th floor for 500 gold one way. From the 8th floor on though, it's all on foot. She activates her magic boots and decides to use the descent as a warm-up, speeding through the corridor at high speed, while another adventurer just walks normally in the background. Then she starts running at high speed through the dungeon using her shortcut route. If she runs for about an hour using this path, she can avoid most of the monsters along the way. Thanks to her magic boots, her body feels light and she experiences little fatigue. A massive creature rushes past in the corridor as she speeds through, and another adventurer can be seen on the stairs above. Meanwhile, small slime creatures just sit harmlessly on the dungeon floor as she passes by. Eventually, she reaches the deepest layer. Unlike the upper floors where a wide variety of monsters live, Sagu's deepest layer alone is a vast field dungeon. The landscape opens up into this enormous underground area with mountains, a dark forested region surrounding what appears to be a lake. For adventurers who want to make money, this is the place to be. Looking out over the landscape, she checks her magic detector device. The monsters here are mostly low rank, so there's little danger even when going solo. She notes the safe zone location for today. The safe zones move around, so adventurers need to be careful and track their position. Since the possible paths are limited, she can make a rough prediction about where creatures will pass. Whichever route they take, they'll pass nearby by evening, so she decides to wait around this area. The route and speed vary day by day, but the pattern is predictable enough. She moves through the forest and sets up in the tall grass, lying prone with her weapon ready in a hunting position. She scans the forest through her scope, viewing different sections of the terrain. Her eye focuses intently as she watches and waits. Then movement catches her attention as a large serpent creature emerges and moves through the area. She identifies it as a crun serpent and gets excited about the catch. Meat is in demand, and if it's a big one, it'll fetch a pretty good price. After taking it down, she examines the body and notes it's a normal-sized specimen. It's her first try, so this will do. She sits with the serpent's body, knowing that as long as her life isn't in danger, it's good manners in the dungeon to bring back everything she's hunted. Normally, she'd just bag her kills and deliver them straight to the Adventurers Guild, but since the serpent is small, she decides to keep it instead of selling it. She sometimes butchers monsters herself. The crun serpent's liver is a delicacy, and since it's easy to prepare, it's considered a feast for common folk. If she butchers it herself, she can have it all to herself. After processing the serpent, she catches 3 bird-type monsters flying in the sky. She's got a large-capacity magic bag that can hold large combined items, so she decides to just sell the birds as is. When it starts getting dark around the dungeon, she notes the good timing and moves to a safe zone. The safe zone turns out to be a massive turtle creature called Max Turtle Anchan, a herbivore that moves at 6 kilometers per hour. It's currently sleepy and has a residential area on its back. There are goods from this creature now on sale at the guild. She climbs the stairs up to the turtle's back. A male adventurer calls out to her as a regular, recognizing her as the one who just took down the muggle bird. He asks if she's that regular and she approaches. Several adventurers gather around. One of them asks to trade with her, saying he needs muggle bird materials for his adventure rank exam quest. A safe zone isn't only a place for rest and recovery, but also for adventurers to exchange information and negotiate. Meanwhile, a guild-affiliated adventurer instructor is present. She mentions that trading during the rank exam should be against the rules, but the instructor says since it's part of the exam, he'll allow it. Since she just does dungeon diving as a casual hobby, She hardly ever does trades or negotiations. She makes sure to value opportunities like this to interact with other adventurers. She thinks that's still a pretty weird nickname to end up with. But she's come here so often there's even a clear mark where her tent was at her favorite spot. Hold up. Smash like and subscribe for more hidden manga gems. Now, I dare you to comment, I'm loving it. I bet most of you won't do it. Alright, let's continue. She sets up camp, pulling out her fireproof, waterproof tent. The setup is complete with her tent erected, fire started, sleeping bag laid out on a mat, campfire going, and 3 barrier stones placed around the perimeter. Next up is dinner with the liver she just got and the vegetables she received. She washes the liver well with clean water, then cuts and grills it, adding salt and pepper before sandwiching it with vegetables. The finished product looks like gourmet burgers, perfectly prepared and ready to eat. She sits down to eat, and the texture is springy yet smooth on the tongue. The aftertaste is light, kind of like chicken, and she doesn't taste any gaminess at all. It goes perfectly with bread or fresh vegetables. Not only is it delicious, but it fills her with both magic and satisfies her stomach. She feels like she could eat this forever, praise be to dungeon meals. After finishing the meal, she brews tea and lights the lamp. She settles in and slowly cleans the gun, maintaining her equipment properly. She notes that doing this at home would be too noisy, so the dungeon campsite is perfect for it. Later, she slides down from Max Turtle as it moves through the dungeon area. Meanwhile, back in the safe zone, the other adventurers continue discussing her. The dark-haired adventurer says she feels like a seasoned adventurer, but another responds that a real veteran wouldn't keep coming to beginner dungeons like this. Someone else adds that they only see her about once a week anyway. Then one adventurer concludes she feels more like a hobbyist than an adventurer. The male adventurer continues thinking about her. Her fundamentals and knowledge are solid, and even with C-rank combat ability, it's more than enough. If she made this her profession, she could earn a lot. Meanwhile, at night, the massive Max Turtle sleeps peacefully in the dungeon. The adventurer wonders what kind of person she usually is and what she does. She finishes cleaning her gun and puts out the fire, then lies down to sleep. The safe spot is hard and shaky, and the draft is freezing. She can hear monsters crying in the distance. The sunfireflies that light the dungeon shine like the sun during the day, but at night they only glow faintly. The real starry sky is quite different from what the artificial lighting shows. She lies peacefully in her sleeping bag, looking up at the genuine starry sky above the dungeon. The view is beautiful and serene. She thinks to herself that dungeons really are a great hobby. Morning comes and Max Turtle starts moving again, shaking the ground. Suddenly, she realizes she forgot her homework. She had thought she'd wrap things up quickly in the morning, go for one more hunt, and then head home. She figures it can't be helped and decides she might as well head back now. After leaving the dungeon, she checks out at the Adventurers Guild. She descends from Max Turtle and the other adventurers wave goodbye to her. Then she brings the collected items to the buyback counter. The guild worker at the counter mentions the buyback rate is pretty low lately, so this time might be a loss. While the appraisal is underway, she washes off the grime at the public bath. Once she's restocked her supplies and received her payment, she heads home. Back at home, she's dressed in fancy noble clothing, drinking tea while a maid works in the background. Meanwhile, her father is absolutely furious, yelling about how it was a tea party, where the crown prince himself attended. If she had just played it right, the position of his fiancé wouldn't have been some impossible dream. He tells her seriously that she needs to have way more awareness of her position as a count's daughter. She looks annoyed and frustrated as hell. She thinks to herself that starting tomorrow, it's back to the same boring school life and those annoying noble gatherings. Later that night, looking out at her mansion, she thinks she just wants to go to a dungeon instead. Now, the Kransar Penso Godei is this giant serpent that dwells on the lowest floor of the dungeon. Lacking any poison and moving pretty slowly, it's become the most hunted creature among adventurers. The plentiful meat from these things supports the tables of common folk all throughout the royal capital. Back at the palace, someone acknowledges they already know this. Meanwhile, it's pretty common for the skin and bones to be processed into tools and daily necessities. The small liver is apparently said to be a delicacy for commoners. The protagonist is shown in a bath looking irritated about something. Then someone calls out to Lady Florentina, asking what the heck she's doing over there. She's literally peeking from behind something in the palace. But here's the thing. The soup made from the skin and bones of a cran serpent is especially delicious when a skilled chef who serves nobles puts real time and care into making it. It becomes a true delicacy then. A servant insists this is just a meal for the servants though, and that she can't have any even if it's made with the souvenirs the young lady herself brought back. Another servant panics, saying if the master finds out it would be really impossible. They can't imagine letting the young lady eat such cheap ingredients. Meanwhile, the protagonist runs through the streets fully geared with her weapon and equipment. The protagonist explains that her hobby is solo dungeons on weekends. She enjoys hunting and camping in the beginner dungeon saga. Sometimes she goes all in on one or the other, and today she's going all in on camping. She plans to use her gear to make some tasty camp food, and she's got a top-notch Meiji thermos with heating, cooling, and boiling functions, expensive but worth it. Her plan is to head straight for the safe zone on the lowest floor, and once check-in is done, she'll get the ingredients ready before entering the dungeon. Later that night, she'll have some clan serpent soup while enjoying tea and the view, taking her time cleaning her gun. She's also making a richly simmered, hearty cream risotto. At the guild, the worker asks her to show her card. The protagonist holds it up, ready for a laid-back dungeon camp. She arrives at the dungeon entrance and makes her way to the safe zone. The lowest level safe zone is on Max Turtle, whose personality is fickle, but her route prediction has failed and the turtle isn't where she expected. She realizes they won't reach here for at least half a day even if she waits. She wonders why it had to break on a day like this. She decides to boost her mana, tries petting Max Turtle, but there's no helping it. Meanwhile, Florentina rides on top of Max Turtle, heading straight for the safe zone while ignoring every monster along the way. She's used to dodging and running on the upper floors since just finishing off enemies and collecting loot takes forever. In the dungeon, there's an unspoken rule that adventurers must always bring back what they've taken unless their life is in danger. As she speeds through, she spots something moving. A living creature appears ahead. She thinks it might be a clan serpent. Florentina faces down a Kaminari Wagma, an advanced monster found in the beginner dungeon saga that only appears a few times a year. The massive bear-like creature stands before her, and this is her first time seeing a living specimen. It's a Thunderstone carrier with a number 5 encounter rate. She engages the bear with her sword drawn, ready for combat. But then Florentina weighs her options. She's heard its defense isn't that strong, and if she aims for a vital spot, she could probably take it down. The problem is she realizes they'd have to disassemble it and extract the magic stone first, or else the magic bag is gonna break. The creature is too powerful to assault directly without breaking her equipment. Meanwhile, the Thunder Bear's meat and hide are luxury goods, and a flawless taxidermy specimen can fetch hundreds of millions. It's a rare prize that would make any adventurer cry with joy. But here's the thing, she's never butchered a bear that huge, and searching for the magic stone would take all day with no time to even eat. So she decides the only option is to run. She's doing this as a hobby after all. Thunder Bear trait number 1 kicks in. If someone runs, the thing sees them as prey and chases them down. Florentina bolts as the massive bear roars and pursues her through the dungeon. Then trait number 2 becomes apparent. The bear uses magic since it's got a magic stone embedded in its body. The creature unleashes magical attacks as it hunts her down. Florentina realizes it can't be helped, so she pushes her mana to the max and swings her weapon at the charging bear with everything she's got. After the clash, Florentina catches her breath while resting. Her magic is almost gone and the safe zone is getting farther away. Once she rests a little, she'll hurry. She's made it this far, so things should work out. But the bear locks onto her scent again. It's got a keen nose, and once it picks a target, it'll chase them all over the dungeon. Florentina perches in a tree, watching the creature search for her below. She realizes running away with the magic boots isn't going to work anymore. One of her boots has already fallen off, and she braces herself for what's coming next. Then Florentina goes all out against the Thunder Bear. The massive creature roars as she attacks it with everything she has, arrows piercing its body as the battle intensifies. The bear's jaws snap viciously as she dodges and counters. It's a brutal clash between adventurer and monster. Eventually the fight ends. Florentina stands victorious, though she's breathing hard. Even after shooting it point blank in the head, the thing kept moving for 20 minutes. She looks over the massive carcass and assesses what she's got. The hide is riddled with holes, but there's still enough for 2 coats. Over 100 kilos of meat, several kilos of rare parts that can be used for medicine. It's a big one, and somewhere in this massive body, she's supposed to find a magic stone the size of a ping-pong ball. Florentina steadies herself, telling herself to focus and not lose confidence. She'll dismantle this thing with every skill she has. The work begins. Hours pass as she butchers the enormous bear, her feet moving back and forth across the dungeon floor. The environment shifts around her as day drags on, and eventually she collapses, completely spent from the grueling work. 4 hours of dismantling, 3 hours walking to the safe zone, she still can't find the magic stone anywhere. Florentina sits there utterly exhausted, drenched in sweat, having barely managed to finish. Both her magic and stamina are nearly zero. But first things first though, she needs to wash her hands, start a fire, set up the tent and barrier stone, then the meat. She sets everything up and finally crashes. A bird lands nearby and completely misses her. Then again, just a regular miss from the local wildlife. Meanwhile, Florentina is passed out cold under her tent in the safe zone. Other adventurers start gathering around, and the male adventurer she knows spots her and asks what's with the tent over her head. Another adventurer crouches down asking what's wrong and if she had no luck yesterday. Florentina barely responds. It's already almost noon, not really morning anymore, but word spreads fast. Other adventurers heard there was a witness yesterday, so they came down just in case. Turns out one of the rank exam quests this time involves getting a thunder grizzly paw, and they've apparently got one. The male adventurer's eyes go wide. She took down a thunder grizzly. Florentina just looks exhausted and annoyed. Someone immediately tries to negotiate, wanting her to come up with something they can trade within 2 weeks. She flat out refuses, saying there's nothing worth trading for such rare material. The adventurer counters that if the value matches, trade negotiations are allowed. But Florentina's had enough, she really has to go now. She suggests they settle accounts next week since it's an important dinner meeting, and she needs to be back by 4 in the afternoon. She's got plans this evening. The male adventurer asks if she's on her way to eat, and she hesitates but confirms she has to leave. Then the male adventurer tells Florentina that potions on an empty stomach aren't good and asks if she has something she can eat right away. Florentina looks at a bowl in her hands and mentions it's crane serpent soup. The group gathers around as she prepares the meal. Someone comments that the heat retention is amazing, and it looks totally different from what they sell at stores. Another person notes it doesn't seem very filling either. Florentina tears up some dried meat and adds it to the bowl. The soup contains dried vermicelli, dried wakame, and magic tofu. The male adventurer explains the process. He tells her to pour in the soup, season it with her favorite spices, and add the dungeon mitsuba they picked earlier. Then put the lid on and wait 3 minutes. He says it should be ready while they clean up before she takes the potion. After eating, Florentina asks where he encountered the bear. The male adventurer brushes off her thanks and says the bear materials she gave him are already more than enough. Someone gets excited realizing there's still hope to find more. The male adventurer mentions that if the bears are appearing in packs, the guild needs to know. Someone tells the others to go right away and return the bowl to the guild reception desk. Florentina holds the bowl and thinks about how she could have enjoyed this delicious food so much more easily if she'd just cooked and eaten the soup at home. But she knows well that unexpected troubles happen all the time and dungeons' danger is always there, side by side with everything else. She looks at the steaming bowl of noodles in front of her and steadies herself. Then she digs in. The male adventurer watches as she absolutely destroys that bowl of soup, slurping down the noodles with pure satisfaction. Florentina's face shows complete bliss as she eats from the bowl. Suddenly, the other adventurers panic when they hear a roar nearby. The male adventurer sweats nervously. Someone yells that maybe there's still a chance with the bear. But the truth is simple, though meals eaten in a dungeon taste absolutely amazing. Meanwhile, a megaphone announcement echoes through the area calling for the attention of all adventurers. A group of official-looking people stand behind a desk representing the Royal Capital Adventurers Support and Assistance Association. They announce they've taken control of the area starting today. The Sagoda Dungeon Purchasing Department will be suspending all monster purchasing operations. Florentina stands there looking thoroughly displeased with this development. The occupation is in effect during this period. The scene shifts to explain Florentina's actual lifestyle. Her hobby is solo dungeons on weekends. She runs through dungeons hunting monsters and camping out. It's partly because it's her hobby, but she's also exhausted and finds it tough. She tends to stockpile all sorts of things. The rest is for storage and souvenirs, and she plans to sell the loot next time. A diagram shows her surrounded by various food items with arrows pointing inward, illustrating a balanced diet of meat and vegetables. This is how she savors it all during her weekend hobby. But then Florentina's magic bag starts beeping warnings about low capacity and increased mana consumption. Eventually, even her magic bag became completely full. She heads to the guild counter where she planned to sell her goods before entering the dungeon. When she arrives, though, she finds an unexpected occupation taking place. Neither the staff nor the adventurers seem alarmed by the situation. Florentina decides to check in at reception and ask what's going on. A female guild worker with a headband greets her and asks if it's her first time experiencing this since she's a regular. The guild worker explains that the Royal Capital Adventurer Support Association, a group made up of adventurers' partners and families, ends up taking over the guild's buyback section a few times a year. Florentina looks confused as someone mentions that all monster materials and ores have their buybacks suspended. When asked how long this lasts, the worker says until they've bought enough to be satisfied, usually about 3 days. But even though buybacks are suspended, the guild worker gets excited and explains that dungeon vegetables are still being eagerly bought up. Right now, dungeon daikon and dungeon napa cabbage are in season, so their buyback prices are way up. They need vegetables desperately. The guild worker goes on to explain that adventurers only hunt and eat meat, and the guild's food stores are stuffed full of it. Someone mentions that vegetables grow naturally on the lowest floors and contain magic power that's good for adventurers' meals. Florentina reacts with shock at the mention of vegetables. The worker continues, saying these dungeon vegetables grow in dungeons but not near the guild, so they sell for high prices in the market and are hard to get. To prevent nutritional imbalance, the support committee regularly makes forced adjustment. The worker points out that people tend to hunt monsters because they bring in money, but humans can't just live off meat forever. She thanks Florentina for filling out the registration form, then mentions that Florentina's rank is still E rank. The guild worker cheerfully brings up the regulations for when an E-rank adventurer enters a dungeon. The male adventurer asks if Florentina knows the rule as she stands there listening to the regulation being explained. If the guild deems it necessary, E-rank adventurers must carry out designated exploration and gathering under the guidance and supervision of an instructor. Florentina realizes this is essentially kidnapping. Suddenly, the scene shifts to the Sagoa dungeon lowest floor. Reinforcements arrive at the harvest site as the guild worker spots Florentina and calls out to her. Multiple adventurers are frantically harvesting vegetables from massive fields. Someone complains that no matter how much they pick, it never ends. The male adventurer looks at an entire field of vegetables and notes they didn't even till the soil. He explains that dungeon vegetables have incredible reproductive power, and if left alone, even rare herbs won't be able to grow. Normally, the herbivorous monsters eat the vegetables, but lately even they can't keep up because people have been hunting those herbivores too much. Florentina looks annoyed as the male adventurer warns that if the dungeon's balance collapses, it could cause a stampede, which would be a huge problem. The instructor tells Florentina that as an E-rank adventurer, she shouldn't think she has the right to refuse or any human rights today. She'll be starting by harvesting everything one by one. The scene reveals these massive vegetable fields sprawling across the dungeon floor. The male adventurer instructs everyone on how to harvest radishes properly, telling them to grab the radishes by the base of the leaves and pull since the root part is buried in the soil. Florentina looks down at what she's holding and wonders whether it's actually a radish, then starts pulling. Meanwhile, the guild worker with the headband asks Florentina how to move the soil with the hoe, but Florentina is already holding an absolutely massive radish that she somehow just pulled out. The male adventurer tells her that if it breaks, there's no way she can buy it, so she should just take it back with her. Florentina stares at the giant radish and asks if the soil was too hard. Someone nearby comments that they never knew their sister had such a weird weakness. Another person observes that the world really is well balanced after all. Florentina just stares at the enormous pile of harvested vegetables in complete shock. The male adventurer tells her that just because she's good with vegetables doesn't mean she has no talent for hunting. That's not what he said at all. He adds that as far as the guild is concerned, they're totally fine with her just joining them. The instructor stands nearby wearing sunglasses with this sparkle effect around her. Florentina calls out for him to wait a second. The male adventurer acknowledges her, then asks if she could handle a certain matter soon. Florentina thanks him quietly. The scene shifts to the lowest floor safe zone where this large herbivore creature sleeps peacefully. The instructor comments that just like the purchasing department, this place has been occupied too. She explains that half of the vegetables they buy are turned into preserved foods right here. The area is filled with jars of preserved items. She notes that food processed in the dungeon lasts way longer, and both the flavor and the magic are better. Most of the preserved foods sold at the guild are actually made by the support association. The male adventurer points out that obviously the workers can't live on just vegetables, so they cook meals for the guys working down below at the same time. Then the male adventurer tells Florentina he'd like her to go hunt some meat they can use for cooking, or something quick like snakes. He adds that she's probably better at working with soil than hunting anyway. The instructor observes that Florentina is actually the type who does care about her own abilities, even though she thought Florentina didn't really care before. The scene shifts to this wide landscape shot of the dungeon. The male adventurer reflects that for adventurers it's normal to play to their strengths and divide roles based on their professions. Florentina is good at something after all. Florentina spots a wood deer standing peacefully in the forest. The creature has these flowering branches growing from its antlers, and somehow the whole scene feels kind of hazy. She charges at the deer and attacks it with her blade, figuring that after observing it eating and checking out its size, that should be plenty of meat. Then Florentina suddenly realizes something: the vegetables that grew too much were being eaten by herbivorous monsters. There's this close-up sequence showing the deer's eye and her blade striking, but the deer just keeps grazing on the excess vegetables before bolting through the forest. Florentina watches as the creature flees into the distance, noting that they got away. But someone tells Florentina not to hunt the creatures since it's closed season right now. Meanwhile, another worker calls for her to come help take care of the tree instead. The worker explains that nature's designed to keep things running smoothly, but sometimes it doesn't work out, especially when people get involved. When that happens, someone has to step in and keep things moving, and the worker tells her to remember this. Florentina looks at the situation and thinks about how if the tree dies, the creatures will lose their food source. She notes that this kind of pure conservation work isn't really her style, but it's making her think about complicated things. Later, Florentina carries the massive pile of radishes she harvested earlier, feeling them dig into her shoulders. She reflects on what she learned about balance. If they don't hunt monsters, the balance will collapse and monsters will overflow from the dungeon, causing a stampede. On the other hand, keeping that balance is tricky work. Suddenly, her magic bag displays a warning that storage space is running low, and Florentina realizes this is the actual cause of her problem. Before worrying about complicated dungeon ecology stuff, she needs to deal with her overflowing inventory first. Florentina puts on sunglasses dramatically with the male adventurer standing behind her. The workers ask what happened to the young lady, and the male adventurer explains that she said she couldn't catch anything, so the vegetables they're looking at are leftovers from her magic bag that she told them to use however they like. The workers are shocked at how much she managed to collect in such a short time, with one of them commenting that she said she'll try a little harder at hunting. The male adventurer and Florentina examine the pile of harvested vegetables together. The male adventurer reflects that valuing the dungeon while continuing to improve oneself is the mark of a good adventurer, or at least, that's what he believes. Meanwhile, someone mentions they heard Florentina does adventuring as a hobby, though nobody really knows for sure. Another person notes that for instructor Roman to take such an interest in her, she must have a bright future ahead. Later, the instructor thanks everyone for their hard work staying so late and tells them there's plenty of food, so they should eat as much as they like. The large herbivore creature sleeps peacefully in the background as preparations continue. The meal is laid out with various dishes made from Florentina's vegetables: simmered daikon, pepper stir-fry with meat and Chinese cabbage, and quick pickles. The workers dig in and praise the food. One comments that the daikon soaked up so much flavor, while another says the meat and Chinese cabbage go perfectly together. A third worker notes that the lightly pickled veggies make a nice palate cleanser. Florentina chews the food thoughtfully. She thinks about how vegetables taste good in a dungeon and realizes this might be her first time actually thinking that. Even though the vegetables are cooked through, they still have a nice crunch. There's a gentle flavor where the meat's savoriness blends perfectly with the vegetables. The male adventurer sits nearby and mentions that a lot of people in the supporters club are into cooking. Florentina notes that she's not planning to raise her rank either, but she kind of wants to join one of these events again sometime. The male adventurer tells her there are even top-ranked adventurers who join every time just for the food. Someone comments on the correct balance for a dungeon, then another character suggests some pork miso soup. Florentina admits she still doesn't really understand the difficult stuff yet. She eats from a bowl and thinks she'll start trying to enjoy meat and vegetables in a balanced way. Later, thanks to the efforts of the E-rank adventurers, the exchange section reopened the following afternoon. Florentina holds another full pot made with damaged vegetables and reflects that she's still a long way off from balancing things properly. A montage rolls through showing various scenes as Florentina talks about her hobby solo dungeon. She explains that hitting up a dungeon to unwind on weekends is basically tradition for her at this point. Then the scene shifts to show what happens on weekdays. Someone asks what she does on weekdays. Papers and notices are plastered everywhere about the final exam schedule, and someone comments that the range of pharmacy is way too broad. Florentina says she focuses on her studies. A note indicates the practical magic test is coming up early next week. Florentina sits in her room explaining that this weekend she'll take a break from her hobbies and actually study for the test. She got a failing grade on the midterm just because she can't use magic, which is honestly such a drag. Books are spread all around her as she notes the practical instructor is way too strict, though apparently these days there are plenty of nobles with magic power who can't actually use spells. She thinks about needing to come up with some kind of plan. Then a maid enters with tea. The maid points out that Florentina doesn't have any problem with the lectures. Even if she fails the practical exam, as long as her final grade is good, her master won't complain. Florentina makes these strange cicada-like sounds in response. The maid asks if that's a new kind of cicada or something, but then the maid mentions that even if she fails, it just means extra lessons in summer. Florentina immediately declares that's exactly the #1 reason she wants to avoid it. She's thinking about her summer plans and notes. She's got tons of things she wants to do, like staying in the Sagoa dungeon or exploring a new dungeon. She needs to make sure she doesn't fail, and tells the maid to include tea parties and summer retreats in the schedule too. The maid suggests Florentina take a little break since pushing herself too hard will only backfire. She points out the other exams are already over anyway. Florentina considers this and agrees there's no point in endlessly worrying about something she doesn't understand. She decides maybe she really should take a little break. She repeats to herself about taking a break just for a bit a little. Suddenly the scene shifts to the guild. A new character with a bob haircut appears at the reception desk and asks if Florentina is the regular lady, noting she said she wasn't coming this weekend. Florentina realizes her feet carried her straight to the guild, even though she thought she'd take a little break before heading back. The guild worker tells her to just wait a sec at the reception desk. Florentina tries to protest that she's not doing the dungeon today, but the worker's already posting something up on the board. A paper shows RTA, which stands for real-time attack ranking. The guild worker explains it's a dungeon competition they host there. There's a stamina division and magic division where people compete for the fastest time entering and coming back out of the dungeon. Right now, the hero of this country holds first place in both, basically challenging everyone. Florentina realizes she's so busted. Meanwhile, the guild worker with the headband breaks down how the real-time attack divisions work. The stamina division bans all magic and is super popular. It's just pure muscle and tools, though it's surprisingly challenging. Florentina's processing this new information, realizing RTA is an actual thing people do. She asks about the magic division. The worker adds that top-ranked players can complete it in under 3 hours, but even for unranked participants it takes just over 5 hours. Then at the guild, the female worker with the headband cheerfully announces that Florentina will be taking the tutorial. The male adventurer asks if she wasn't planning to come this weekend. A tutorial prompt appears asking if she would like to take the instructor's tutorial. With yes and no buttons, someone clicks it. The tutorial begins explaining RTA strategy. First, decide on the route firmly and avoid encounters with monsters as much as possible. Make a plan that matches stamina and mana reserves. A notice appears showing that instructor Tutoliano has completed the training demonstration. The tutorial warns that running out of mana along the way means not even making it to the goal. The male adventurer tells Florentina she knows this dungeon inside out, so what matters is how she distributes stamina and mana, especially since mana potions don't work too well. He says to talk to him when she's ready. Florentina thinks to herself that she hasn't really run up to the 8th floor before, but she remembers the map and shortcuts. For energy distribution, maybe 20% on the way down, 50% at the bottom floor, and 30% on the way back. The guild worker tells her to go ahead. The attack starts and the timer begins at 0. Florentina charges forward as the male adventurer and guild workers watch from the starting area. On the upper floors, the monsters are only slime, so she focuses purely on running. The space is cramped with people around, so she sets the magic boots to 60% output. The timer hits 24 minutes and 9 seconds. She increases output to 80%. Noting the real challenge starts from the 8th layer. Florentina pushes forward on the route she knows by heart, determined to shave down her time. It usually takes an hour, but today she'll do it in 30 minutes. The scene shows the mountain terrain of the lowest level, and since it's a long run, she needs to take proper breaks. At 49 minutes and 52 seconds, she rests briefly. The lowest level has tons of dangers, so she'll need to check the route and safe zones carefully. Meanwhile, Florentina adjusts her equipment during the break. At 1 hour, 1 minute, and 28 seconds, she declares the break is over and pushes straight for the center. The path ahead presents a choice. If she tries moving through the lowest layer by the shortest route, she'll have to travel through a pathless area filled only with trees and rocks. On top of that, there'll be way more encounters with monsters that hide and live among the terrain, and when that happens, it forces a wide detour. Then Florentina spots a clan serpent in the area and makes her decision. The clan serpent is docile, so it probably won't chase them. She declares she won't make the same mistake twice, because if they defeat it, that would cause a huge time loss. The scene shifts to show the Sagoda dungeon's lowest floor central area, where a massive glowing dungeon core dominates the landscape. The timer reads 1 hour, 35 minutes, and 42 seconds. Instructions appear explaining that when she reaches the core, she needs to hold out her participation badge. The goal is complete once the color of the magic stone completely changes to bright red. Florentina considers her options. The safe zone is over there, but if they stop by there it'll be a bit of a detour. She notes that taking a break in the central area is dangerous. She decides against it and pushes forward. Florentina races toward the entrance of the lowest level with no breaks. Later at the lowest level entrance, the timer shows 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 33 seconds. Florentina calculates that it's been a little over 2 hours to get here. The way back is all uphill, so it's mostly safe. She considers whether to drink a potion and shorten the rest time, thinking she could finish in about another hour. Then Florentina charges upward at full speed, aiming to reach the 8th layer the same way she came down. She blasts through the 7th layer, 6th layer, and 5th floor, passing slimes along the way. At 2 hours, 43 minutes, and 56 seconds, she reaches the 3rd layer, just a bit more to go. Florentina calculates her current pace, and at this rate she can make it in under 3 hours. But then reality hits, her body won't move and she feels sick. Her legs hurt and even her shoulders carrying the bag feel painfully tight. The realization strikes her she's out of mana. Florentina sits there exhausted, trying to think of a way out of this mess. She already drank a potion, so the mana potion won't work. She recalls being told about the balance between mana and stamina, and that she was warned to be careful. Then the male adventurer appears and asks what she's doing up on the upper floors. Someone tells him he's got to hear this. Meanwhile, the male adventurer explains his own situation. The instructor pushed a cleanup job in the upper levels on him. They said he's got plenty of stamina, and yeah, the day rate's good, but the place is just ridiculously huge. Then the conversation shifts to Florentina's situation. Someone brings up finder's rights and 30%. The male adventurer seems confused about the terms, but another person explains she can get 30% of what's in the bag as finder's rights. The group reacts with surprise as they figure out what that actually means. Meanwhile, Florentina takes stock of her situation. She still has some stamina left, her magic power is 0, but she has 2 floors left. She clears the 3rd floor and reaches the stairs. Even if she can't get a perfect score or a passing grade, if her legs can move, there's still something she can do. If she can run, there's still something she can do. Florentina pushes forward with pure determination. She at least wants to avoid failing. Then the dungeon entrance comes into view. Just a bit more, a little longer. Florentina crosses the finish line and collapses at the guild entrance. The timer reads 3 hours, 18 minutes and 40 seconds. Someone celebrates her finish while another yells it's a record. Meanwhile, the male adventurer sits nearby as Florentina lies exhausted on the ground, pointing out she ran out of magic halfway through. The female guild worker rushes over, saying that's incredible for her first time, though she didn't make the ranking. She pauses mid-sentence, confused about calling her sis. Florentina's face shows complete exhaustion as she reflects on her condition. Her lungs and heart hurt, she's out of magic and feels sick, and since she ran barefoot, her feet are completely numb. She wonders how long it's been since she's run this far without any magic. Then, a contemplative silence settles over the scene as Florentina processes what just happened. Her mind starts clearing, and she notices her head feels incredibly clear now. The breeze feels amazing against her skin, but suddenly, confusion hits her as she questions why she even came to the guild again. Later, back at the guild, the maid greets Florentina at the entrance, welcoming her back and commenting that was quite a long break. Someone asks if it was a waste then, but the maid responds she only made it thinking it would help Florentina study better. Florentina admits honestly that's right. She just wanted a break from test studying. Then the maid presents a beautiful handmade fruit sandwich with plenty of maid-made cream, and Florentina's eyes light up at the sight. She takes a bite and the flavors revive her. The cream and bread are both so fluffy and moist, the sugar and tartness soaking right into her overworked body. She mentions that as expected, today she'll just take a bath and go straight to bed. The maid asks if Florentina is studying for the practical magic exam, mentioning that Florentina said she graduated from their school with pretty good grades, right? Another comment notes the maid is working here because her title rank is low. The maid gives Florentina some practical advice, recalling that the midterm was a magic-only test. In that case, the final will definitely be a mixed test of magic and magical tools. If Florentina reviews her practice reports and understands the characteristics of the magical tools, she should be able to aim for a passing score just by practicing basic mana control. The thing is, if someone's gonna take on a challenge, it's only natural to plan out a strategy first. Florentina regrets not asking the maid about this stuff earlier. But honestly, instead of overthinking everything, it's probably better to just take a break and clear the head. Maybe it's actually easier to find a breakthrough that way. After the weekend rolls around, the teacher stands at the front of the classroom holding papers. He announces the contents of the magic practical final exam. It'll involve using both magic and magical tools. The scene transitions with a shot of the building exterior. The announcement causes immediate chaos. The exam is a 42.195-kilometer long-distance run, and anyone who can't finish within the time limit straight up fails. One student claims they were number 1 in the entire grade by a landslide. Students panic across the classroom. Some yell they can't take this much while others beg for mercy, asking if the teacher can cut them some slack and take about 50% off the distance. Students scream they're scared and don't want to do it. Meanwhile, Florentina declares her hobby is solo dungeon exploration. This weekend, too, she's ditching household chores to enjoy exploring a beginner dungeon. This time, she'll set up camp at a safe zone first and focus on bird hunting. A note explains that safe zone is abbreviated as Anchai from Anzan Chidai. The scene shows Florentina with other adventurers preparing for the expedition. But at the dungeon, the male adventurer stands with slime creatures nearby and announces the safe zone will be off-limits for a while. The male adventurer announces that until repairs are done, entry to the lowest floor of F rank is prohibited. Even E rank and above should turn back if they're not confident. The scene shows the damaged area that'll take 2 or 3 days to heal. Apparently yesterday some idiot got drunk, started a fight, and ended up blasting magic everywhere. Back at the guild, the male adventurer with glasses warns that the culprit is still hiding somewhere on the lowest floor. Meanwhile, a female guild worker calls out for anyone willing to accept the culprit capture request to come over, and the male adventurer adds that if anyone spots them, they should report to the guild immediately. Suddenly, someone yells about their uncle. Then an invitation to a matchmaking party appears showing introductions for good matches and connections with the royal family. But Florentina thinks about going back home though, complaining about an after-party with some madam. She reflects on her hobby, reminding herself that safety comes first even though it's just for fun. Meanwhile, other adventurers panic at the sight of someone bringing children. They ask if that person is seriously going to take kids into the dungeon. The male adventurer insists it'll be a good experience while others shout for them to stop because it's dangerous. Then Florentina remembers something. A male voice declares that someone can make their own safety, and she recalls that's what her great-uncle often said too. She agrees to the idea. Fired up now, she yells about safety and decides to give it a shot, maybe even try catching one herself. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the panel, information about the dungeon layout appears, showing there are two standard camping spots. The first one's on the lowest floor outside the safe zones, basically a wide cliff where monsters have trouble approaching, and if something goes down, escaping to an upper level is pretty quick. But there's a catch: tons of traffic, so actually relaxing there is tough. The other option is a shrine office that protects the dungeon core, plus a break room where anyone can stay out of the rain. The problem though, there's a high chance of advanced monsters or mutants showing up there. Then the dungeon layout gets shown with the entrance to the lowest level all marked up. That camping spot on the cliff gets noted again for its escape route advantages, but again, heavy traffic's the downside. The shrine area near the dungeon core section offers shelter, but comes with wind and dangerous monster spawn. Florentina admits she'd normally choose the first option, but then mentions she found an interesting place the other day. She walks toward a cave entrance hidden in the dungeon terrain. Florentina enters the cave and examines the small entrance. Once inside though, she's surprised by how spacious it actually is despite the narrow opening. Looking around, she notices several features scattered throughout the cave, air holes everywhere, even on the sleeping platform. A carved sleeping platform has been built right into the rock, and there's even a stone circle designed for containing a campfire. Florentina observes that people still use this place. The campfire marks are a bit old though, so they probably aren't from that culprit. Then she notices there are more campfire traces too, and the wood layout is different from the last time she came. Looking at the setup, she realizes the safe zone in Sogo was made 50 years ago, which means this hidden camping spot must have been built before that. She decides to get started. First, she hangs a rope net over the entrance using materials she found inside the cave. With a determined expression, Florentina announces it's time to begin her safety setup. Then Florentina wraps monster-repelling herb vines around the rope net she hung at the cave entrance. After that, she lights a campfire and tosses in some dried herbal vines. The smell of herbs that monsters hate spreads with the smoke. Humans can only tell it smells a bit like herbs though. Meanwhile, Florentina also uses sound to drive away nearby monsters, even though she admits even humans might find this unpleasant. While the campfire is burning, she reminds herself that the responsible adult should never take their eyes off the fire. For low-level monsters in Sago, this works well enough, though the prey might run away too. Florentina butchers her catch and reviews today's results. Then she realizes the scent of an S-class monster keeps other monsters away, so she also covers the cave entrance from the inside with white wolf fur. Moving on to cooking, today's menu is black bread and herb-roasted cookbird. Florentina prepares skewer meat rubbed with seasoning and herbs, then roasts it slowly over low heat on the campfire. The oil is a bit heavy but would probably go even better with softer bread. The flavor is sweet and salty with a rich taste, and thanks to the herbs, the smell is gone and the meat comes out crispy and juicy. The sun is setting, so she decides to just sleep for today. She'll leave cleaning the gun for tomorrow. But as she settles in, Florentina realizes she forgot her sleeping bag and blanket as well as the barrier stone. Night falls over the dungeon, and the cave sits hidden in the terrain with Florentina's campfire flickering inside. She's sleeping on the stone platform, wrapped up in her gear. Meanwhile, down below, three male adventurers armed with weapons are making their way through the dungeon. The adventurers spot the cave, and one of them suggests they strip whoever's inside of everything valuable since there really were people here after all. The dark-haired one starts complaining about being treated like criminals just for a little scuffle, saying those bastards are treating C-rank guys like they're criminals. His companion chimes in, saying they can just exchange the loot for cash and ditch this country, then register as adventurers again somewhere else and make money there. Then they notice the cheap barrier stone. One guy says if they keep him that far away, he won't be any use. Another one suggests it sounds good and asks if they should have some fun since it looks like a woman. Suddenly, one of the adventurers crushes the barrier stone under his boot, calling them trash adventurers for a trash dungeon. The fight breaks out, and Florentina fires her gun from the ground. The shot connects with one of the criminal adventurers and sends him flying back. The dark-haired criminal pulls out his sword, while the male adventurer watches from a distance with concern written all over his face. Florentina curses back at the attackers as they come rushing at her. Then Florentina wraps something up while holding her gun with this stern expression, and suddenly the trap activates. It catches two of the criminal adventurers in a rope net, leaving them suspended in the air and struggling to break free. Some of them are knocked unconscious, but Florentina managed to avoid all the vital points. Even if it's self-defense, killing someone can cause a ton of trouble later on, so she figures she's just used to aiming for monsters' weak spots anyway. Meanwhile, Florentina works on securing the criminals through the air vent in the makeshift shelter. She mentions they probably won't escape or fly right away, but since the net's salvaged, she doesn't know how strong it actually is. In the distance, a flare shoots into the sky. Multiple adventurers across the dungeon notice it, and one of them recognizes it as a rescue flare. Then the rescue team arrives at the bivouac cave. Injured adventurers are being tended to while the criminals remain trapped in the net, and someone thanks Regularsis for the help. The male adventurer tells Florentina that if she files a claim, it'll boost her guild contribution, so she might even level up without an exam. It'll also boost her bounty for catching them, but Florentina tells him not to worry, saying it's fine. There's a note about her being E-rank for life. Meanwhile, other adventurers look around the cave shelter with amazement. One asks if Florentina made this place, but she stays quiet. Someone else asks who did then. The male adventurer explains it's a dungeon bivouac. The male adventurer gives some context. There are tons of dungeons scattered across the world that don't have any safe zones. In those kinds of dungeons, bivouac points and shelters exist that adventurers created through trial and error over the years. There are even some leftovers from back when Sago didn't have a safe zone. The scene shows a wide view of the dungeon landscape with old shelter structures scattered around. He continues explaining that once the safe zone appeared, everyone just stopped using them. He calls it the lost wisdom of their predecessors. Then one adventurer asks in disbelief if there are still people actually using these shelters even now. Another one laughs and says no way. But the male adventurer corrects them, saying there are actually quite a few weirdos out there who straight up refuse to use safe zones. The guild is aware of a few of them, but this particular shelter is apparently a new discovery. Meanwhile, Florentina thinks to herself, if someone's enjoying a dungeon as a hobby, ensuring safety is obviously a given. The male adventurer comments that everyone has their own way of engaging with dungeons, just like her. The way to make things safe and have fun with them differs from person to person, and there still seem to be plenty of methods Florentina doesn't know yet. Then, the male adventurer mentions he'll try using this place again himself and also look for some other spots. He asks if that wire trap was Florentina's own creation, but she admits she totally forgot she set up one more trap. The preview announces that next time, Lady Tina will sort of join the nobles' tea party. Meanwhile, Florentina's weekend routine begins. Her hobby is solo dungeons, and her joy is changing into her favorite gear and exploring beginner dungeons. The scene shows her dungeon equipment hanging in the closet, her adventurer's coat, magic bag, boots, and sword. But below that, fancy noble items are displayed. An ornate fan, a sparkly dress with elaborate patterns, and an elegant white gown. These represent the noble life she's being forced into. Florentina appears in full noble attire, wearing an elegant white dress with fur trim and holding a decorative fan. She thinks about how her shitty old man made plans for her without asking. Meanwhile, other noble ladies gather around her, complimenting Lady Florentina and asking if her dress is the new summer design from the trading company. The splash page shows Florentina in her full noble dress looking irritated as hell. In the background, her dungeon gear, boots, bag, and sword are all crossed out. Then the scene reveals a grand garden party at the Crown Prince's estate, nobles in formal attire walking around the manicured grounds. Florentina acknowledges that it is the Crown Prince's garden party after all, so she's gotta play along. For now, she's finished greeting the nobles, so until the Crown Prince shows up, she'll just nibble on sweets in a corner somewhere. Suddenly, she discovers an elaborate display of chocolates made by the royal patissier. The craftsmanship impresses her as she examines the perfectly arranged confections on their platter. Florentina tastes the chocolate and savors it, the refined sweetness spreading after the melty chocolate flavor hits just right. Sugar is the best, she thinks. Her thoughts drift to having afternoon tea in a safe zone after a hunt or something. The fruit sandwich from that shop was nice, and getting things after the RTA was delicious too. Then reality sets in. When she actually goes to these tea parties, she always ends up craving salty stuff way more than sweets. She admits she's not even good at making tea in the first place, and someone else points out that if she's gonna brew proper tea, she needs all sorts of equipment. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the scene, nobles are chatting in the background. Someone suggests going next week, and another agrees they should definitely go. Florentina thinks to herself that just thinking about it makes her want to hit up a dungeon instead. Suddenly, an announcement rings out that the crown prince has arrived. The handsome young prince enters with sparkles and fanfare, and behind him walks another figure. Nobles immediately start speculating. Someone asks if that's perhaps the hero, and another confirms that yeah, the one behind him is indeed the hero. In a small panel, Chibai Florentina stands at attention among the other nobles, responding dutifully. Then the crown prince approaches Florentina directly. He introduces her as the daughter of Count Trenmel, Lady Florentina G. Trenmel, and asks if this is the girl that was mentioned. Florentina responds with formal courtesy, acknowledging it's been a while. Her father has always been very kind to the prince. The crown prince then asks if she recognizes this person, gesturing to the hero standing beside him. Florentina's shown prostrating or bowing deeply, completely uncertain how to respond. The narration provides some context about the hero. So apparently 10 years ago in the Eastern high-level dungeon, an abnormal gathering occurred, and a calamity-class monster known as the Demon King emerged. At that time, the hero suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The scene cuts to a dramatic flashback of the battle silhouettes of adventurers facing down this massive demonic entity. The hero, together with his companions, defeated the Demon King and quelled the entire stampede. Even now, he travels around high-level dungeons across the land to prevent stampedes from occurring, constantly building his name through exploration and monster subjugation. The final panel shows him in action, fighting creatures in full dungeon gear. Basically, he's the hero of their nation. Meanwhile, the crown prince introduces the hero to the nobles at the garden party. Some noble explains that despite being a handsome, devoted husband with 3 kids, the hero remains incredibly popular with women. Another mentions his name appears on the Sagor Dungeon RTA leaderboard, and he just broke a record recently. Then a noble asks why the hero would even be in some beginner's dungeon. Another noble girl chimes in saying she should introduce herself too. Someone introduces a man as an S-rank adventurer who used to be a member of their party. The man, Roman Z. Gehler, smiles and tells Lady Trenmel that she was the one who forced him to participate. Florentina responds that she went out of her way to invite him so she could meet the hero, but the others quickly tell her not to talk about that. Roman explains he retired due to an injury and now works with the guild in the royal capital before formally introducing himself to the group. Someone comments that back at the guild, everyone was saying she must be a merchant's or official's daughter, noting how neatly dressed she always is when she comes around. Someone else chimes in, saying they never imagined Florentina was once part of the hero's party, and now finding out she's a noble lady on top of that. A woman remarks that given the Trenmel name, Florentina's strength makes sense. Roman explains he heard a story about the daughter, or maybe sister, of the head of the Hunter clan. He describes how there's an upper-class dungeon in Trenmel territory, the only one in the country that's properly managed, and that the clan managing it for generations married into the lord's family. Florentina says maybe it's fate they met here, and Roman says he knew it. She mentions that would be her grandmother. Roman then says the higher-ups know, but asks Florentina to please keep quiet about him. She agrees, asking if he could keep quiet about her too. Roman explains his coworkers and the others don't know who he really is. Meanwhile, Florentina thinks to herself that people will start treating her differently. It's not like she's really trying to hide being a noble or anything. She admits she really hates it when people start acting different all of a sudden. But if they find out she was in the hero's party, that's when things get messy. She concludes that if it gets out, it'll just be a hassle. Florentina stands there with an annoyed expression. Suddenly, someone calls out to Roman, telling him it's rude to flirt with a lady in the corner like that, and to come over because they've got something good. Roman thanks his sister, and Florentina thinks he's really saving her. The scene shifts to show darts equipment. Someone explains the crown prince brought darts in to kill time, but it turned out to be really unpopular. A noble woman plays with the dartboard, noting the hero doesn't seem to have the time for it anyway. Roman asks Florentina how about one round for old time's sake. She responds that even if she did it with him, there's no point. Roman sparkles as he asks Lady Trenmel if she would like to come along. Someone observes she always looks like that when she's scheming something. Others nearby start gossiping excitedly, asking if she's rich or his type, and whether he's finally decided to get married. Florentina flatly responds no. Then someone calls out for help, saying the crown prince, His Highness, is calling for the hero. In the background at the garden party, one noble asks another if there's any progress, but the guy apologizes and says he's out, tells them to have fun without him. A dart flies toward the dartboard as someone comments that it's just right for passing the time. Florentina holds a dart and admits she's never played darts before. Someone reassures her not to worry since the hero and everyone else are too busy fawning over the crown prince. and no one's watching some corner game like this. Roman smiles and tells Lady Trenmel to come on, no need to hold back. A dart strikes the board dramatically. Then Roman suggests they get serious. Someone asks if she can't do it. Florentina responds by asking how about this then. Roman leans in and whispers that he could secretly tell her something. If she beats him, he'll tell her about the shortcut from the 8th to the 12th floor that only top-ranked adventurers and the guild higher-ups know about. Florentina thinks about how that's the hidden shortcut they couldn't find no matter how hard they looked. She counters that if he loses, she'll use training as an excuse to dump some annoying requests on him. Roman grins and says, however, if she loses, she'll have to receive his training instead. He asks what it'll be. Florentina asks if he's familiar with the rules of darts. Someone points out that the highest score isn't in the center. The dartboard shows 2 shots already embedded. The score display shows 130 points for Florentina G. Trenmel with the calculation breakdown. Roman gets excited and says that's what he's talking about. His matching score of 130 points appears on the board. He tells her they should keep it going, noting there are 7 rounds left. The competition intensifies through multiple rounds. Round 2 shows both hitting 310 points. Round 3 continues with another 310 for both players. The back and forth continues through rounds 4, 5, and 6 with neither gaining an advantage. By round 7, the dartboard shows they're completely tied at 1,210 points each. In the final round 8, Florentina thinks that at least she won't lose, calculating that if she can just hit the highest score one more time with 2 triples on the 20. But her face goes blank with shock. The dartboard shows 2 darts already embedded in triple 20s. Roman laughs and says, as always, she lets things slip right at the crucial moment. The final score calculation shows 1,350 points for round 8 with 20 points remaining. Roman confidently declares he's going straight down the middle, noting that if he doesn't roll under 20, he wins, and maybe he'll even ask for a request where he can still win from the center. The dart lands and shows 20. Florentina stammers that this isn't happening at all, as the result displays 1,350 points. But then someone approaches, asking if they're interrupting something while addressing the crown prince. Roman's expression changes as the person urgently tells him they need him to return to the guild immediately. Apparently a magic device detected an anomaly, and someone from the Sagoa Dungeon Guild is waiting at the venue entrance. Roman explains that something must have happened in the dungeon for them to come all the way to the royal castle just to fetch him. Florentina apologizes to the crown prince and excuses herself first. Down below, Florentina looks completely shocked as Roman tells her they'll pick this up next time, apologizing as he calls her sis. Meanwhile, at the guild entrance, someone calls out for instructor Roman. He rushes forward as someone asks what happened. Florentina suddenly notices her guild card is glowing. A guild member apologizes for disturbing them during their rest, but explains the guildmaster says they must return immediately. The guild member continues, explaining that the guildmaster has issued an emergency summons to all the capital's adventurers. There are already injured people, and a magic device detected an anomaly in the core. Both Florentina and Roman's expressions turn serious as they learn a stampede is happening in the dungeon. Then a transition page shows a llama character holding a sign, directing everyone to the next page. At the Crown Prince's garden party at the royal castle, the hero asks the Crown Prince where Roman is. The Crown Prince tells him there's just been an official report from the guild. A stampede has broken out in the Sogo dungeon. He asks the hero to speak with the Support Association president and be ready to head out at any time just in case, though he notes it's unnecessary with a rating of 3.35. The hero thinks to himself that Sogo is a beginner-level dungeon, so it's probably not his turn to step in. Meanwhile, someone warns that if they don't handle it properly, the anti-subsidy faction will get cocky. Another person asks where Miss Trenmel is, and they're told she suddenly started feeling unwell and already went home for the day. The scene shifts to show the dungeon entrance built into a cliff face. Florentina prepares her adventuring gear, strapping on equipment and readying herself. The explanation states that anyone other than guild personnel needs to go through complicated procedures to enter dungeons, so adventurers must be registered with the Dungeon Guild to enter. While adventurers are a remarkably free profession with no penalties for refusing requests or jobs, there is one obligation. Then Roman explains that it's been confirmed a mass outbreak of poisoned small bats and an abnormality in the core occurred on the lowest floor, and it's been determined that a stampede has taken place. The guild explains that when an abnormal crowd forms in a dungeon, adventurers have to respond to the emergency summons and put everything they've got into suppressing it. Meanwhile, various adventurers start gathering in response, people showing up in all different kinds of gear and equipment. Someone mentions that those who didn't show up this time better remember it the next time they come around. Apparently C-ranks rarely ever show up to their place. Then the guild worker notes that while it's technically an obligation, there's no fixed 4-hour rule or anything like that. The problem is that high-level raiders are underestimating low-level dungeons way too much. Someone else clarifies they can only issue emergency summons up to C rank, but almost everyone usually sticks to level 45 anyway. The current response includes 2 parties, 1 solo D rank party, 3 E rank parties, 12 solos, 1 F rank party, 3 solos, and 4 C ranks. Someone observes that's pretty damn few. Florentina's eyes show determination, but her thoughts are clearly lingering on something else. Meanwhile, someone mentions the Count's daughter who supported the royal family's party. Turns out the guildmaster has been reaching out through connections trying to get more help. Roman asks Florentina if she's really okay with this, since she mentioned she had plans today. He notes that at least it's some relief that his sister came along. The discussion turns to just how serious this whole situation really is. If things get bad enough, the knights or even the hero can step in, so the worst should be avoided, but here's the catch. If they make the hero move, everyone in their guild will get fired. Then the strategy gets laid out. 1 C-rank solo adventurer and 1 E-rank party of 4 will guard the entrance to the lowest floor, keeping the bats from flying up to the higher levels. Roman acknowledges they'll just have to manage with the ones they have now. A diagram shows the plan. The main force will head straight for the dungeon core while defeating bats along the way. Meanwhile, all the other C and D rank parties will spread out from the entrance. The instructions continue. Other E ranks will each hunt bats in areas they won't pass through, taking down as many as they can. The higher ranks will keep fighting around the core until it stabilizes. Suddenly, someone announces that in total, they'll also join the 2 E rank parties with instructors. But there's a problem. There are only 5 C and D rank parties available. Several adventurers react with surprise. The F ranks will provide rear support and guard the guild's non-combatants at the entrance and safe zone. Once everyone confirms their assigned area, they're supposed to head down to the lowest level. Roman tells Florentina she'll be taking the farthest and widest area since she's top tier among the E ranks in both skill and mobility. Meanwhile, the scene shows the guild entrance area with people preparing to move out. Roman asks Florentina if she's ever taken part in a stampede battle back in her hometown. She explains that the Tremel dungeon is high level, but her great-uncle manages it, so stampedes hardly ever happen there. She mentions it only happened once when she was little, and she was just a rear guard back then. The flashback shows Florentina bundled up in heavy winter gear from that time. Roman confirms she has done it before, just once then. Since she usually goes solo, he tells her to make sure she puts her own safety first. If anything happens, she should retreat to a safe zone immediately, and as long as she's just doing this as a hobby, she shouldn't push herself too hard. But Florentina thinks to herself that emergency situations don't really allow for excuses like that. Their assigned area is the deepest one, and if they hurry, they can get there in about 30 minutes. For a stampede like this, they have to cut the monster numbers down no matter what. Florentina declares she'll take down every single one that comes at her action panels, show her fighting poison small bats in dynamic combat as she draws her gun and prepares to engage the swarm approaching her position. She notes that even though there are tons of them, poison small bats are lower-class creatures, so as long as she doesn't get bitten, there's nothing to worry about. Then she reflects on what a stampede really is. A stampede is like the dungeon catching a cold. Meanwhile, if adventurers take proper care of the dungeon's health, it rarely catches a cold, and the panels show adventurers in protective gear dealing with the situation. But once a stampede happens, the core stops functioning normally and starts producing a huge number of contaminated monsters. If those things fill the dungeon with contamination, they'll head outside next to spread it even further. Florentina remembers her great-uncle saying, the contaminated monsters turn to dust and vanish once they're defeated. The panels show bats being taken down and disintegrating into dust particles as Florentina fights through the swarm. To prevent stampede contamination in advance and restore the core to normal, adventurers need special medicine that kills the pathogen. Meanwhile, Florentina fights through the swarm with intense speed and precision. Someone observes that this is what a real adventurer looks like. Then Florentina arrives at her assigned zone, having already taken down at least 50 bats getting here, and not a single one was genuine or normal. She still has some room to breathe, but her ammo isn't limitless. She walks across the dungeon terrain and decides there's no time to complain. She really doesn't want to use this method, but pulls out vials containing blood from the clan serpent they took down before, which she plans to mix with a highly volatile chemical. Because the poison small bat is weak, it tries to inject poison through wounds, so it's extremely sensitive to the smell of blood. Florentina uses this to her advantage as she fights through the swarm, while another adventurer stands in the dungeon watching. Suddenly, Florentina opens fire with explosive bright flashes, taking down groups of bats with devastating efficiency. Florentina lands a perfect shot and celebrates that her magical flash grenades hit bullseye, though she notes they only pack light and sound with no actual killing power. Still, if it's a stampede monster she's dealing with, she can drive it straight to destruction. She counts that she's got 6 grenades left and reminds herself to use them efficiently, cutting down the numbers all at once. Then on the 4th shot, she finally hits a real bat. Florentina decides to throw the empty vials into her magic bag just in case, since they say it's okay to leave materials behind in an emergency. Meanwhile, the male adventurer is visible in the distance. Florentina reflects on the situation for a moment. She's not fighting for meat or materials, but just to avoid danger, just to kill the enemy. She looks at her closed eyes and thinks it's just not like her. Something feels off, but she can't help these thoughts. Suddenly, a big swarm approaches. She tells herself it's pointless to think about that right now. She's down to only 3 grenades left. The area around her seems to have settled down since she doesn't sense any bats and can hear the surrounding sounds again. Maybe it's calmed down here. Still, it's outside her assigned zone, but she has to thin their numbers anyway. Then Florentina looks through her scope and sees something alarming. The bats all over the dungeon are heading toward the core. Meanwhile, another adventurer is visible in the distance. She considers using a signal flare but realizes it's too far and they wouldn't notice in the middle of a fight. She's got a bad feeling about this. Suddenly, Roman's words echo in her mind about doing this just as a hobby. Florentina thinks to herself whether she can reach the core before the bats do if she goes full speed with her magic boots. Florentina launches herself forward in a full sprint. She thinks this is completely out of their range now. Seriously, not her style. At the core area, chaos erupts as someone yells to shut the door. The male adventurer shouts to keep the injured and E-ranks out, while other adventurers cry out for the instructor as the situation deteriorates rapidly. Then the adventurers freeze in shock at what appears before them. The male adventurer identifies it as a mutant, a massive corrupted thunder bear standing in the dungeon, its presence absolutely overwhelming. Someone explains that these are the corrupted beasts, high-level monsters that command and control other creatures, rarely produced by the dungeon core during a stampede. The male adventurer tells everyone not to make a reckless move, but another adventurer says he'll take care of it. But the situation deteriorates fast. Someone curses as a new swarm of bats approaches, and adventurers call out for Roman and the instructor at the worst possible time. Suddenly, something happens in the distance. A massive explosion flashes across the dungeon. The swarm gets hit by something, and adventurers notice magic being used, hearing a huge noise echoing from far away. The male adventurer looks up, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Someone yells for everyone to cover their eyes and ears and get down. Then Florentina comes flying in, throwing another flash grenade. The explosion detonates with devastating effect, creating multiple sequential blasts that light up the entire area. The male adventurer asks what Florentina is doing here and calls her sis. Meanwhile, the bats scatter in all directions from the blast, and several adventurers are left on the ground recovering from the chaos. Florentina and the male adventurer now stand facing the mutant thunder bear. Someone orders to fire and ignore the surrounding threats. Florentina opens up with her handgun, but even the stun grenade didn't take the creature down. The thing is massive. All 6 shots hit, but they deflect right off. Her handgun just isn't strong enough for this. Adventurers start panicking as more bats swarm back in. Someone yells that the numbers are crazy. They call for the instructor and warn that the bats are coming again. The instructor orders everyone to hurry and fall back indoors for now. Suddenly, a massive swarm of bats floods the area, and everyone retreats as the situation becomes completely untenable. Someone yells for everyone to hurry and get inside. The adventurers rush through the doors to safety as the massive corrupted thunder bear and swarms of bats dominate the dungeon behind them. The creature's dark presence fills the entire space as everyone retreats indoors. Inside the safe zone, the male adventurer comments on the awful scraping noise coming from outside, trying to keep everyone calm by explaining that even though there are tons of bats out there, they're just small poison bats without the strength to break through walls or doors. But someone points out that the mutated one seems different though. The hooded mage tells everyone it's fine since they've got defensive magic up. Meanwhile, someone asks if anything comes to mind, whether there's been heavy lifting or too much weight put on something. The view shifts to show a prosthetic leg, most likely damaged from overuse. The group continues talking while a dartboard showing calculations is visible in the background. The male adventurer thinks about the situation as someone explains that as an adventurer, wounds and poison like this are pretty normal. Protecting low-rank adventurers is part of an instructor's job. The real issue is that the mana isn't flowing steadily, so both output and reaction speed are down, probably because of the poison. The stress level rises as everyone processes the situation. Someone asks if the male adventurer is really okay since another mutated one appeared, wondering when reinforcements will arrive. Then the person in the giraffe pattern headband admits they're just hungry. Someone snaps back asking how they can be complaining about their stomach growling at a time like this. They explain defensively that they came in a hurry and didn't have time to prepare emergency ration. Suddenly, Florentina pulls out something that immediately gets everyone's attention. Someone asks what Big Sis has, and the male adventurer identifies it as Thunder Grizzly Meat super high-grade stuff. People get excited asking if they can really eat it, saying they'd die without regrets if they could eat this. But someone warns them not to be reckless, explaining that using fire in this enclosed space would suffocate everyone. The person complains about their stomach, but then realizes Florentina has a mountain of sweets instead of just the meat. The male adventurer tells his big sis that even if she came to the dungeon like it's a field trip, this is way too much. Still, he admits she saved them and jokes that snacks should stay under 100 yen. Florentina munches on sweets happily while someone reminds everyone to make sure they drink water. Even in an emergency like this, the sweets still taste good to her. Meanwhile, someone asks if anyone needs medicine. The male adventurer turns to his sister, asking if she's actually enjoying the dungeon even at a time like this, and honestly the mood has softened a bit. One of the younger adventurers falls asleep right there on the spot, and people suggest letting her sleep since it's better to rest when they can. Someone even offers Florentina some water too. Then someone tells the rest of the group to take turns resting since this is going to be a long haul. Florentina lies there with her eyes closed, but she admits she doesn't have the guts to sleep in a situation like this. The scene shifts to a snowy landscape outside the royal capital. Someone calls out to Tina in the cold. A voice instructs her that even if she goes to enter a dungeon, she must enter it alone. The figure continues, telling her that even when facing high-level monsters, she must learn to do everything on her own, hunting, exploring, and even securing a place to sleep. Florentina stands in the snow in full winter gear, looking somewhat downcast as she processes these harsh lessons. Suddenly, the window shatters with a massive crash, and the adventurers panic as bats start getting in. Someone yells that the window's been smashed and to bring the boards. Meanwhile, the male adventurer greets his sister with a casual good morning. Someone asks Florentina if she's okay since she hasn't even slept for 30 minutes. But the chaos intensifies as the mutant Thunder Bear appears at the broken window. Someone yells that it's a mutant and to step away from the window or they'll get dragged out. The massive corrupted bear reaches in and grabs at the adventurers. People scream for help as they're pulled toward the opening, and someone cries out for Abel. Florentina launches herself at the creature, throwing a powerful punch directly into the mutant bear's face. The safe zone building sits surrounded by the mutant creatures and swarms of bats circling overhead. Someone inside says hey, drawing attention to something. Florentina stands protectively with her weapon drawn, shielding someone behind her. The person calls her big sister while the other adventurers ask what's wrong. Someone tells her she saved them and to hurry and seal up the opening while they have the chance, so the group rushes to secure the broken window. The group starts arguing about the situation. Someone exclaims that the last hit broke the defensive magic and curses about what they're gonna do. Meanwhile, another person tries to stay practical, saying they need to fix the window so it doesn't get broken like before. But someone else protests in disbelief, asking if Florentina is really going outside alone to kill that mutant. The male adventurer turns to his sister and asks how she's planning to take it down. Florentina responds simply that it's easy. She examines a scope device with a diagram showing trajectories, thinking about whether she can hit a moving mutant from a distance where the bats won't sense her. The male adventurer looks concerned and admits that while the gun looks like it could do the job, there are complications. Then the male adventurer asks about a communication magic tool and telescope. Someone reacts with shock, asking if those aren't incredibly expensive. They point out that even the guild's budget couldn't afford those. Another person explains that Florentina used up all her savings from before coming to the royal capital. The male adventurer tells the group that if they give him the coordinates, Florentina won't miss. But someone notes that the scope's field of vision is narrow though. Florentina's face appears in close-up, her expression determined. She declares that next time she'll definitely pierce through. Someone tells them fine, they'll bet on the sister. But the male adventurer says he's going out with her though. The person with the headband says if they're going to be the spotter, the visibility in this shack is too poor. They explain that besides, they've already been poisoned anyway. Someone protests that the spotter's prosthetic leg won't move. The male adventurer says this is reckless and calls out for instructor Roman. Then the dark-haired female adventurer asks to let them help too. Someone comments on the plan as the group gathers, and someone asks if everyone is ready. Another person announces they're opening the door, and the adventurers rush out into the dungeon. The group bursts through the doorway as someone yells to scatter. Another adventurer shouts to get the bats away from the mutant. The female adventurer with glasses throws their last stun grenade. The explosion goes off in a massive blast, scattering bats and creating an opening. Suddenly, Florentina launches herself into the air at full power using her magic boots. She flies through the dungeon space with her rifle ready. The hooded spotter below confirms they're ready and gives the go-ahead signal. Florentina positions herself for the shot. The spotter calls out coordinates, reporting that the mutant's moving below the dungeon core, slowly heading toward the upper left at about a 20-degree angle. Florentina tracks the target through her scope, the view showing the massive mutant bear pushing through the swarm of bats. The shot fires and the mutant takes the hit. Florentina reports she hit the body and wings, but it's not a fatal wound. The spotter says they can't see clearly and asks if she can aim for the head, but there are other bats around its head blocking the shot. Suddenly, Florentina gets swarmed by the poison bats and struggles to thin them out. Her brother calls out to her in concern, but another swarm of bats comes at her. Florentina says she's okay though, explaining that poisoned small bats have weak strength and toxins. They won't make her immobile right away. Meanwhile, the other adventurers continue fighting the bat swarms below. The male adventurer tells her that if she's an adventurer, she's used to this. Florentina agrees, saying this is nothing. Then she yells for everyone to get away from her to stay the hell away. The other adventurers react and back off as she continues fighting through the bat swarm while maintaining her sniping position. But then Florentina's brother charges in, punching through the bat swarm with full force. Someone yells at him to come at them as he fights off the damn bats. Another adventurer shouts about what he's doing with that much blood, since the bats will all swarm at once. The explosion of blood attracts the bats and they start heading for the instructor. The adventurers below get overwhelmed and struggle against the swarm. The spotter watches through their scope as the bats drop lower and lower in the sky, reporting that the bats in the sky are descending. Someone calls out the coordinates, yelling for Florentina to target the dungeon core in the upper right. Florentina lines up her shot on the mutant bear through her scope. She fires, and the shot hits with devastating impact. The mutant bear staggers back and starts disintegrating right before everyone's eyes. One of the adventurers asks if they actually defeated it, and sure enough, the massive creature turns to dust and vanishes into nothing. Then the dungeon core's color starts changing, and some of the bats begin disappearing on their own. The adventurers realize they're over the hump and need to keep thinning out the remaining bats. Someone yells to prioritize Instructor Roman and stop his bleeding immediately. Suddenly, someone spots something and yells for everyone to look over there. Florentina's brother calls out to his big sister. Florentina lies there completely exhausted with poison bats still clinging to her face and body, but she's smiling. A memory surfaces of past advice about going into the Iva dungeon alone. The voice had told her she must learn to do everything on her own, but that she can make friends and allies without them being in her party. The memory continues with someone questioning if they should do that. The advice keeps going, saying that even if she runs into a hardship that she just can't handle on her own, if she has friends, she'll feel like she can get through anything. The flashback shows Florentina with Roman in his winter gear during their past training. Back in the present, someone looks at Florentina's scars and recognizes them, their voice trailing off. Meanwhile, Florentina's brother notices she's awake. The other adventurers react with relief, saying thank goodness their big sister is awake. Florentina asks if this is a safe zone, and her brother confirms the stampede has been suppressed. Right after that, the guild master arrived with an A-rank party and they wiped out the remaining bats. The dungeon core has completely returned to its original color. Florentina says that's good. Then she smells something incredibly delicious coming from somewhere. The adventurers explain they're getting ready for a party to celebrate stopping the stampede. Florentina tries to tell everyone they should wait until they're out of the dungeon since there are injured people, but apparently the guildmaster brought out his private stash of venison. Back during the fight, everyone in the center had chanted in unison that they wanted meat. Someone wonders if this is their fault. The meat will be grilled soon, so everyone should look forward to it. Someone explains the two injured ones can't have any since it's hard to digest, so maybe next time. Another person tells Florentina not to be such a stickler. An adventurer insists one skewer won't hurt. Florentina tries to protest, but someone's already offering her the meat. The wood deer aged meat skewers are ready. The adventurers explain it's rare venison from a high-ranking wood deer, and it's aged too. The meat looks thick, juicy, and satisfying, plus it's charcoal grilled. Suddenly, Florentina's brother calls out to his big sister. One of the rescued adventurers thanks Florentina for saving them, and the whole group, including the woman with glasses and the older man, gathers around Florentina and her brother. Florentina reflects that her hobby is solo dungeoneering. Going on reckless adventures like this, facing crises or overcoming hardships with comrades, it just isn't her style. It really isn't like her at all. She holds the meat skewer looking conflicted. The Sogo dungeon venison she ate for the first time was thick and delicious, but it left a sort of ticklish aftertaste. Then, a while after that, summer vacation started at school. Every time Florentina fights with her annoying parents, she runs away from home and comes to the Sogo dungeon. Her father yells for her from the mansion window as she bolts. Since she's a hero of the Stampede, the guild told her she could rank up to D without an exam if she applied, but since she flatly refused, her rank remains E if anything's changed. It's just that she's started approaching familiar faces herself. She heads into the dungeon on her own. Florentina continues her solo dungeon runs, fighting monsters like the large wolf creature while other adventurers watch from a distance. She sets up camp in the safe zone with her tent. Later, she's cooking up the meat from her hunts, looking genuinely happy as she prepares her meal in the pan. The scene shifts to modern times. A young student sits at their desk late at night, completely stressed out and studying hard. Meanwhile, in another location, someone's resting inside a tent. Florentina's face appears thoughtful as the starry night sky spreads over the dungeon landscape. She lies there peacefully asleep with this contented expression on her face. Her thoughts drift as she reflects on her philosophy. Dungeons are what matter after all, and it's best to enter them as a hobby. Then the setting changes to Tokyo in the modern world. On one side there's this cram school teacher named Akido, and on the other is JK Florentina, who's also living in Tokyo. Florentina mentions she got something right after it went on sale and wants to try Wild Game too, but it's tough in the big city. The teacher points out she can just buy it online. He was actually thinking of making curry too, so he got some venison, and tells her fine, he'll let her have some. The teacher mentions he bought his at a roadside station. Depending on where someone lives, they can even find it at roadside stations. He's got a portable stove but thinks he'll use the slow cooker for the stew instead. The ingredients and rice cooker are all laid out on the counter. Florentina asks if he's not doing any prep work like in the solo dungeon manga. The teacher explains the meat on the market has already been processed by pros. At least the meat he bought was delicious without any extra prep. There's even a note mentioning the author tried a quick thaw without seasoning and it turned out pretty good. After thawing the meat into bite-sized pieces, he pats it dry with paper towels and cuts it up. Then he just puts the seared meat into the slow cooker with the chopped veggies and water, then hits the switch. Since he doesn't have to watch the fire, the teacher figures he might as well start reading the manga he just bought. The finished dish is shown as modern Jibir venison tomato curry, and the final step is adding the curry roux to the slow cooker. Florentina tastes the curry and notes that even though the meat has such a bold flavor, it's not gamey at all and so tender. Then summer arrives. Florentina had thought she'd be spending every day indulging in her hobbies as soon as she finished her homework, but instead things took a different turn. She's been invited to join His Highness the Crown Prince on his matchmaking summer retreat. Right at the last minute, she's been roped into this. The long summer break from school has begun, and Florentina looks thoroughly annoyed about the situation. His Highness Wilfried R. Abel Dir Kadria Canron, the Crown Prince, is introduced among a field of flowers. Several years ago, while buried under the crushing weight of his official duties, he used to work endlessly. He declared that he's the man who will become the king of this country. After all, he'll use every bit of money and power at his disposal. The Crown Prince is said to have declared that he will absolutely marry the woman of his destiny. He should be allowed to be a little selfish when it comes to his future spouse. Nobles and attendants react with shock to his passionate declaration. Between his official duties, it seems the Crown Prince has been working hard at matchmaking in his search for his fated partner, regardless of country, title, or status. Large-scale matchmaking events like this are held from time to time, and a lady who's been personally nominated can't exactly refuse unless there's an extreme circumstance. Even so, to accept a last-minute nomination without even asking her, Florentina thinks of her father as that shitty old man. No matter how anyone looks at it, she's just a filler for the lady who cancelled. Then a maid enters the room and addresses Florentina. A schedule for the summer retreat has arrived from the Crown Prince's subordinate. There's a meet and greet party being held today at 6 in the evening, so she's free until then. Florentina tells the maid she was told it's fine to go outside and sightsee. Though most of the ladies are staying in their rooms to prepare for the party, Florentina heads out the door instead. She's equipped with her full adventuring gear. Rifle, hair clip with casual updo, magic bag, no makeup, her favorite coat, trousers, and magic boots. All items marked with M are magic items with magical attributes. At the window, Florentina announces she'll be back by 6. But the maid calls back that she won't make it by 6, so please be back by 5 instead. Her hobby is solo dungeoneering. She enjoys exploring, hunting, and camping by entering dungeons located all over the world, completely alone. The thing is, though, the ones she dives into aren't unexplored high-level dungeons, but rather fully mapped-out, beginner-level, ultra-low-rank dungeons. Ever since she heard the summer retreat was being held in the city, she's been keeping an eye on this place. Now she stands before a dungeon entrance carved right into the rocky terrain. The Eno dungeon for beginners sits there carved into the mountainside, and nearby stands the dungeon guild building. Inside, a guild worker asks Florentina if this is her first time at E rank. He tells her to just write her name and rank on that bulletin board over there. After that, she's free to come and go as she pleases. Meanwhile, Florentina looks at her gear hanging up. Someone explains that entering a dungeon is usually just like this, but another voice calls it sloppy. At the registration board, Florentina signs in while the male adventurer stands nearby. He mentions that once someone signs the register even at his great uncle's place, they basically just left everyone alone. Then the situation gets explained further. The guild was more of a countermeasure against poachers anyway. Illegal entry is one thing, but apparently the guildmaster was gonna get chewed out. Turns out the guys who got wiped out in the back were D ranks. They were at least checking people in and out. Meanwhile, back at the entrance, someone notes there's no one there either. The male adventurer starts worrying about what happens if he can't handle going to other dungeons anymore. But then a cheerful guild worker tells him to please ask if there's anything he doesn't understand, and she suggests having some bread. She asks him to please fill out the Sago entry form. The male adventurer mentions he's gotten way too used to Sago's thorough hospitality. Someone reminds him that first an instructor will guide him. The Ana dungeon has only 2 floors, but that being said, the first floor is just a vast, empty space. Florentina stands in the massive cavern, looking around at scattered debris and signs. There are people organizing their belongings down here. Florentina figures no one actually lives in the dungeon itself. She hears the sound of the waves, and if anyone keeps heading down that long spiral staircase, it leads somewhere deeper. A solitary island appears, surrounded 360 degrees by ocean and clouds, and the view is absolutely stunning with this mountainous island rising from the water. Even though they're underground in a labyrinth, Florentina sees the ocean stretching out before her waves crashing against shores. Various sea creatures swimming in the water around the island. The ocean spreads out before the island, and the strong monsters are offshore, so apparently adventurers can earn more by taking a boat toward the cliffs. But there are cliffs and walls about 10 kilometers out, and it looks like it goes on forever. Even with magic boots though, 10 kilometers over the ocean is a bit much for Florentina. Meanwhile, there are coves and piers here, so she figures she'll just stick to the island. The walls are so blue they look like the real sky, there are waves, and Florentina can even smell the tide. But the monsters are out there somewhere. For now, she might as well explore along the shoreline. She figures hunting and camping are probably out of the question today, but still, there's something about this place. Flying creatures swoop down at her as she navigates the rocky terrain. She makes her way across the coastal rocks and just keeps walking along the shore. Then Florentina feels this strange sensation even though she's just walking around aimlessly. Something feels different. Suddenly it hits her, it's actually fun. The occasional cries of monsters add a nice touch to the atmosphere. It's somehow healing. Maybe it's because it's a new dungeon, or maybe it's just the sound of the waves. The realization hits her, these feelings have just been tucked away for a while now. She thinks it's been since she got her great-uncle's hand-me-downs, and yeah, she remembers now. Meanwhile, Florentina sets up a fabric folding chair right there on the beach shore and sits down in it, feeling peaceful as the sound of the waves fills the air. Then she starts thinking through the situation. There are hardly any monsters on land here. Fire is such a pain to start, but she wants some tea. She wonders if she's letting her guard down too much, considering this isn't actually a safe zone. Still, she sits back and lets herself relax, because something about this moment just feels right. Suddenly, a small voice calls out to Florentina. She looks up to see this mysterious girl with big eyes and blonde braids wearing a fur-trimmed hood approaching her, and the girl asks if Florentina would like some coffee. Florentina freezes. She hadn't noticed anyone getting this close. The merchant girl quickly waves her hands, trying to ease the tension, insisting she's not a suspicious person while holding up her Adventurer's Guild card as proof. She explains that she's a dungeon merchant who sells potions and things. Then Florentina realizes what's happening. She'd heard the rumors about dungeon merchants actually existing, but this is her first time meeting one in person. The merchant pulls out a menu and Florentina looks through it. There are a ton of coffee options listed, along with potions and lemon water. The merchant points to one of today's recommended blends, and Florentina picks something from the menu. The merchant gets excited, saying it's coming right up. She mentions that Florentina is the first person to ever order coffee from her. Everyone usually just orders medicine or water. She promises to brew a delicious cup. The merchant explains that she gives out free snacks to anyone who brings their own mug. Florentina confirms she has one, and the merchant gets to work preparing the coffee while Florentina waits. The merchant prepares everything carefully, brewing the coffee and getting it ready. She brings over a tray with the freshly made cup and some complimentary kawara cookies, apologizing for the wait. Florentina takes the cup and breathes in deeply. The scent of coffee overpowers even the smell of the tide around them. She realizes it's been so long since she's had coffee, and honestly the aroma alone is already worth it. Then the merchant starts heading off, saying she'll be going now. She tells Florentina that if they meet again to please order another coffee. Florentina watches her leave, still thinking about how mysterious this girl is. She takes a sip of the coffee. The acidity is suppressed to make it mild, but it's bitter with a real depth to it. The taste hits her and she can't help but appreciate how good it is. Meanwhile, the coffee brings out the sweetness of the cookies perfectly. Florentina realizes she's fallen into an endless loop of sipping coffee and eating treats, and she just can't stop. Later, Florentina's walking around, thinking about how this first dungeon trip has gone. She pulls out a chair, rests for a bit, and grabs some coffee, just strolling around and taking it all in. She ends up back in the beach chair under the shade of some trees, sword leaning against the chair, coffee cup in hand. The peaceful scene stretches out before her. She's satisfied. Florentina sits there relaxed in her beach chair, thinking about how she knew it all along. Dungeons are the best when doing it just for fun. She decides she'll head home once she finishes her drink. Later, at a grand ballroom filled with nobles and chandeliers, Roman walks up and greets Florentina casually. Roman explains that the hero came crying to him, and when Roman told the hero he was heading to the Eno dungeon for an inspection, things got complicated real fast. Florentina immediately tells him not to say that out loud and asks why he's even here in the first place. Roman continues, identifying himself as a Sogo dungeon adventurer instructor. He explains that the hero basically begged him to go on the Crown Prince's trip in the hero's place since everyone else was unavailable. Roman could just handle it during his inspection anyway. But Florentina points out that's not the kind of job he can just do on the side. Roman notes their schedules overlapped anyway, so it works out. Roman promises he'll make sure Florentina gets properly compensated. With that explanation settled, the hero headed off on a family vacation. Then Roman mentions that Florentina was planning on diving into the Eno dungeon when she had some free time anyway, right? He's asking her to help with the inspection. Florentina confirms she's planning on heading there later herself though. Roman asks if it's already started. Roman addresses her as his regular customer and says that just doing it as a hobby is fine. He's counting on her. He explains it helps him out too since he's pretty pressed for time like this. If she notices any differences from Sogo or anything else, she should let him know. Meanwhile, Florentina remembers being told something similar during the stampede. Roman mentions there might still be some people hanging around inside the guild or at the entrance, so he'll ask her again some other time. Meanwhile, Florentina reflects on how she'd been feeling pretty depressed about getting stuck with noble lady work right at the start of summer vacation. Roman tells her all right and lays out the details. Since Eno is way easier to reach the bottom floor of than Sogo, she should be able to enjoy it plenty even in a short time. They can't spend 2 full days like they did at Sogo, but since the main point of this trip is the matchmaking thing, they'll actually have quite a bit of free time. Florentina's determination starts building. This time, she's gonna use that spare time to fully enjoy her hobby. Then the scene shifts to this beautiful seaside town where the Crown Prince's matchmaking summer retreat is being held. Florentina is still staying there for His Highness. She's finished her greetings to the Lord and his wife. It's the day before the final day of her own matchmaking. She confirms she's free from this afternoon until tomorrow night. Thanks to having one more person to help coordinate their stories, she's even won her long-awaited overnight stay. There's only one thing to do now. New prey, a new dungeon, time to go. Florentina stands at the dock with a fishing rod pumped up and ready. It's hunting time. Her hobby is solo dungeoneering. She enjoys hunting and camping in beginner dungeons, but she always makes it a point to try hunting first in any new dungeon. The Eno dungeon turns out to be basically an ocean dungeon. Florentina sits in a small boat with a fishing rod. Realizing this is actual fishing rather than hunting. She's using a cheap rod she bought for fishing at the Sogo headwaters, wondering if she'll even catch anything. She's used to waiting and coming up empty from her usual hunts, so she decides to take it slow. Yesterday was fun even just sitting around. She drops her bait into the water, clan serpent meat. Florentina settles in, thinking she'll have some tea and snacks while she waits. But almost immediately something bites. The rod bends violently and she realizes the strength is incredible. The fishing rod nearly snaps from the force. Then a lower-class monster appears, a walk shark. The creature breaches near Florentina's boat, its massive jaws snapping close. Florentina fights the shark with her sword in an explosive battle. She manages to defeat it, but realizes she used her gun out of reflex. That was too close. Despite the meat being soft, it really went flying from the impact. She wonders if there are really swarms of violent things like this even in a beginner dungeon. For now, she decides to just wash the shark off and shove it straight into her magic bag. Florentina heard that managing freshness and finishing off sea monsters is crucial, so she planned to be careful, but she didn't even have the luxury for that. She decides to keep fishing until evening for now. though she initially thinks about stopping when her fishing rod gives out. 30 minutes later, she's caught 12 fish, and the rod held up way better than expected. Thing is, it's too early to head to the safe zone yet, so she wonders what she should do and considers heading out to the end of the pier. But then a shark attacks near the pier where people are standing, and Florentina decides she'll just go to a safe zone after all. There are two safe zones in the Eno dungeon, one's in the tower rising from the middle of the Western Sea, and the other is right here, halfway up the stairs. The island safe zone is a donut-shaped space with several large windows offering a panoramic view of the island and the sea. Florentina thinks if they had a boat, she'd definitely want to try some offshore camping. She sets up her tent, the shape's a bit different than usual, but it'll do. Time to get started on dinner. First, she checks out the water station where the island's spring water flows. She thinks about how dungeon fish are safe to eat raw, so she'll try making that carpaccio they served at yesterday's party. She holds up the first shark she caught. There's no way it could sell anyway, so she'll use it for dinner instead. Florentina starts working on the shark, figuring she'll slice open the belly first. The liver turns out to be massive. She continues with peeling off the skin and separating the meat from the bone, then pauses for a moment. Moving on, dismantling is complete, though the whole process was messy and unsightly enough that she censors the details. Florentina thinks about what to make for dinner now, but she ends up just throwing together whatever leftovers she has lying around. Her meal ends up being this Baumkuchen she'd saved as a snack, some emergency rations of beef jerky and raisins, and black tea that the maid brewed for her before she left. She eats and finds it sweet and delicious. Some days are just like this, honestly. The tea is good, but it doesn't really go with jerky. Florentina thinks she wants soup or something instead. Meanwhile, the dungeon merchant girl is somewhere else, thinking she didn't run into that girl today. She was considering buying another coffee if they were around, but right now what she really needs is water. Someone notes it does go well with wild grapes, though some days are just like that. Later that night, the ocean sits quiet under the stars while Florentina sleeps in her tent. Suddenly someone yells about hurrying because the feeding frenzy is about to start, a boat sitting out on the dark ocean waters. Then a shark gets attacked and killed violently. The commotion wakes Florentina up and she looks outside, noticing adventurers are already active even though it's still pitch black out. Meanwhile, down at the pier, total chaos breaks out, multiple adventurers fighting over territory. Some yell at others to quit pushing and shoving, others declare they're taking that spot today since the end of the pier belongs to them. The more aggressive adventurers tell anyone not geared up to back off. Florentina observes the scene and understands now, the time from midnight to dawn is way better for hunting than during the day. Various adventurers are working with their catches when someone explains that Sogo is pretty much the same deal, but since beginner dungeons have way fewer risks, no one's making real money unless they're catching a ton of them. There's an illustration showing the whole beach operation laid out. Then another adventurer starts instructing the others, telling them to take the ones they've already strangled and toss them in the basket to bring back to the beach. The basket's got medium capacity with some kind of time passage and ice magic infused into it. Meanwhile, someone warns that it might be time to start being careful. Another adventurer confirms it. But suddenly someone shouts urgently for everyone to get out and head to the beach. They need to kill the lights, like right now. A massive creature breaches from the water. Someone identifies it as a dwarf hammerhead shark. The shark closes in fast and someone curses that they're too close. Meanwhile, an adventurer yells for the leader. The panicking group realizes there's no time to cast a spell. Florentina stabs at the dwarf hammerhead shark's head with her knife, but the creature's skull is rock hard. She curses that her knife can't even tell if it's reaching the shark's vitals and wishes she'd brought a gun instead. Then one of the male adventurers yells, asking if she can tilt the shark's head up. Florentina activates her magic boots and slides across the beach with enhanced speed. The male adventurers cast enhancement magic and wind magic to boost their attack, and the combined magical assault blasts the dwarf hammerhead shark away with tremendous force, scattering adventurers across the water and beach. Florentina and the others manage to land safely on the shore. Back on the beach with the defeated shark, one of the adventurers explains that lately the dwarf hammerhead has been appearing around the pier, targeting both monsters and other adventurers. Someone notes that usually these sharks stay out in the deep waters. The bald male adventurer comments that the head will sell for a high price, then proposes a split where Florentina takes the head and skin while his group takes the carcass. Florentina's teammates praise her strength and thank her for saving them. The group discusses the loot distribution further, but then one adventurer gets agitated and yells that if they butcher it themselves, the guild will only buy it as weapon materials. Another adventurer tries to calm him down, saying it's fine since they owe their rescue to Florentina. But the first adventurer argues that if they eat the meat themselves and just take a certain part to the guild, they can avoid going into the red financially. The bald adventurer asks if Florentina is really giving up the valuable head for so little. Florentina offers to show them how to properly butcher the shark, admitting honestly that she'd rather have the meat than the head anyway. The bald adventurer concedes that he wasn't the one who finished it off anyway. The group works on dismantling the massive shark carcass, and Florentina instructs them to be careful not to damage certain parts since they'll be using them, then tells them to work along the spine. The bald adventurer questions if she's really sure she only wants half the skin and a bit of meat, since it's hardly worth any money. The dismantling gets completed, and someone mentions that Florentina messed up and ruined one of the walk sharks earlier. But another adventurer notes she caught 12 walk sharks in broad daylight and comments that she learned a lot about how to butcher them. The bald male adventurer looks at the containers Florentina prepared, noting that she just turned the messed up shark meat into mince. He observes that at least it's not mixed with blood or guts and the skin is off, so it's clean. Florentina asks if they still have the walk shark she messed up earlier. She suggests that if so, they can add some seasonings and aromatics to the minced meat, then mince it down even further with a knife. The finished product is wok shark namru, a traditional minced fish dish. The bald male adventurer tries the namru and comments that it's originally meant to be a snack for drinking, though it's great on bread too. Florentina tastes the dish, and the heavy texture is followed by a punchy flavor of fish and seasoning. She thinks to herself that this would definitely go well with bread. Then the group gathers around with more cooking suggestions. The bald adventurer mentions that if it's minced, they could even put it in a hot pot or grill it. Meanwhile, another adventurer suggests mixing in finely chopped mushrooms and root vegetables, then wrapping it in shiso leaves. Suddenly, one adventurer yells asking what their leader is doing, while another tells everyone to forget the fancy cooking and try the namru first. The group prepares two dishes from their shark haul, presenting dwarf hammerhead shark sashimi drenched in soy sauce alongside the other preparation. But then an argument breaks out among the adventurers. One of them yells that the other monster sashimi should come first, starting with the jerky. The male adventurer fires back that he'll make it right now, whether sautéed or fried since it's delicious either way. Florentina tastes the sashimi, and the meat just melts in her mouth. The whole group gathers together to eat, reflecting on how their first hunt in this new dungeon was full of unknowns and mistakes. Meanwhile, Florentina looks at the prepared shark meat and various dishes they created, and honestly, as long as she got to eat something delicious and was able to learn new things, that's enough for her. Later, the group arrives at the Eno dungeon entrance. The cheerful adventurers celebrate finally making it there, but someone comments that they're way too slow. Turns out the rank exam proctor is already waiting and tells them to get a move on. The group complains it's not their fault since the cheap shared carriage was just too slow, but the proctor points out they were supposed to arrive last night. The male adventurer protests, saying they set this whole thing up elsewhere and came all the way here because they were told they couldn't pass in Sogo and wanted to take the exam here instead. The female guild worker with curly dark hair confirms this is the D-rank promotion exam and asks them to draw one lot from the box. She explains the rules. They pass if they complete the quest written on the lot within 1 week, with no redrawing allowed. Unlike the Sogo dungeon, which takes 2 weeks to complete solo, this exam only requires one quest, but the deadline is short and the tasks are brutal. The key difference, though, is that they won't have an instructor, meaning they'll have to work together as a trio. One of the adventurers draws their quest and reads it aloud. The task is harvesting both eyes of a leviathan. The group reacts enthusiastically, ready to get started, but then someone immediately reacts with disbelief. The leviathan is explained to be the highest-ranking monster in the Eno dungeon, the kind of creature adventurers are lucky to even spot once every few years. One of the male adventurers admits he's been doing this job a long time, but never knew quests like this were actually in the lottery. He notes that to defeat it, they'd need to target its eyes since that's the creature's weakness, but getting to both of them would be extremely difficult. The bald adventurer gives up immediately, saying he'll just earn enough money for the carriage ride home. The others offer to at least help him gather information if he wants. The conversation shifts to whether they'll see the male adventurer's sister if they head into the dungeon. He mentions he asked his sister too, but she seems pretty busy. Someone offers to pay a daily wage if she'll help out with the work. Meanwhile, the scene moves to the Lord's wife's private salon. A new cosmetic oil has just been released by their guild. The product uses materials straight from the dungeon and also has this mana-replenishing effect, with skin that apparently gets better every single time it's used. Noble ladies gather around to examine the product, and one of them immediately identifies it as the one they've been hearing all the buzz about. The ladies start discussing the cosmetic in hushed tones. One suggests it's probably best not to tell highborn noble ladies about this. Another wonders who actually knows about it, or maybe what kind of flowers are even used. Then a third lady mentions the ingredients are from the dungeon and asks what kind of herbs they actually are. Someone admits they tried it yesterday, and their makeup went on completely differently like night and day. Another notes that with this product, Even the crown prince will notice the difference. The noble ladies continue their conversation about the new cosmetics, and one of them reveals the ingredients are monster livers, specifically parts that are usually discarded and have no value at the guild. The blonde noblewoman puts it together that the merchant guild is increasing their earnings by bringing parts that would normally be thrown away directly to a guild that needs them. Then the discussion shifts to rumors about the city's dungeon. One of the ladies mentions she heard they have items that can make love come true, and another chimes in about hearing a rumor related to dungeon. The conversation turns to cherry shells from the Eno dungeon. One noble lady explains they're super fragile, and it's rare to find one in perfect condition. The story goes that a certain female adventurer found two of them and made them into earrings. She was noticed by a prince from another country and they married. The blonde noble reflects that since then, the shells have gained attention among young maidens as a love charm. She considers her options, thinking about a treasure hunt and how an item like that might help with the crown prince. She decides to change things up a bit instead of practicing butchering sharks in the safe zone today. Meanwhile, Florentina walks along the beach with her fork raised, declaring a change of plans to go treasure hunting. When people think of dungeon exploration, they usually imagine camping out while gathering monsters and plants to make a fortune searching for the treasures that frequently appear within dungeons. But Florentina notes that her hobby is solo dungeoneering, and it's kind of sad that humans originally ventured into dungeons for those purposes. The male adventurer points out that in high-level dungeons, there are still plenty of adventurers hunting for treasure, and honestly, tons of reports about treasures being discovered all the time. But in beginner dungeons like Sogo, he hasn't seen or even heard of any in the last 10 years. The place has been picked completely clean and nothing new ever appears. Florentina acknowledges that even if they can't get rare items worthy of being called treasures, there's still a chance they'll at least find some shells. She digs around in the sand and catches a low-rank biting clam monster, already planning to enjoy eating it later. Suddenly, a walk shark attacks out of nowhere. Florentina defends herself with her fork and defeats it pretty easily. The male adventurer points out that they're literally doing the same thing they always do. Florentina admits she meant today should be more like a proper treasure hunt, and while it's great that they caught so much, this isn't quite what she had in mind. Her brother asks if she's all right. Then the dungeon merchant girl appears all cheerfully and greets them, asking if they'd like some coffee. Florentina notices her and the merchant explains she's beachcombing today. Florentina asks what combing even means. The merchant girl shows off today's recommended coffee and lard cookies, explaining that beachcombing is basically the collection of driftage that washes up on the beach. The dungeon merchant girl explains that in the Eno dungeon, scales and bones from high-level monsters sometimes wash up on the shore. Materials like these are usually snatched up by specialists right away. She shows them a pretty shell and mentions she does beachcombing from time to time. The guild will actually buy these materials for magic tools. Florentina examines one of the shells, noting how pretty and cute it is. The merchant girl mentions the pretty ones are hard to find, then reveals she's also looking for the cherry shells her sister mentioned. She explains that tool or furniture makers will buy even shells and driftwood the guild won't purchase, turning them into accessories and stylish furniture, so adventurers can earn some pocket money this way. The merchant girl says she'd love to see a beautiful, unbroken cherry shell someday. The merchant girl tells them she'll be going now. Florentina thanks her for buying the coffee, and the girl leaves while Florentina decides to look around a bit more once she finishes her drink. She sips the coffee and enjoys it, thinking about treasures among the driftwood as she searches the beach. She finds a big seashell. Meanwhile, nearby, Florentina's brother holds up a large piece of driftwood, uncertain if he needs it. Other adventurers call out asking if he doesn't want it, telling him to give it to them. Florentina notices there are 3 of them. Florentina reflects that she only meant to go for a stroll, but ended up getting completely absorbed in beachcombing. She managed to pick up quite a few pretty things, and her basket is now full of various shells and items. She thinks it might be nice to include these with her grandmother's birthday present, since she'd probably like this kind of stuff. Florentina wonders if that's the lady-in-waiting she's thinking of, then plans to wash these up nice and clean, maybe give them to the servants as souvenirs. Florentina remembers she needs to find some clams soon too. But then she notices something. There's a delicious smell coming from somewhere. She wonders if someone is cooking something tasty in the safe zone. Florentina's brother spots her and calls out that it's his sister. Someone asks if she's there, and her brother asks if she didn't have errands to run today, then tells her to listen to him, sounding pretty frustrated. The group of adventurers is gathered in the safe zone, including the dungeon merchant girl, and Florentina looks happy to see them all. Then there's a close-up of 3 shellfish. The brother complains that it's like God is telling them not to become D-ranks, while another adventurer laments that they went all that way for nothing, thinking they'd pull the one top-tier quest out of hundreds of cards. Meanwhile, someone presents grilled snapping clams. Other adventurers ask if they're sure, seeming hesitant, but the group tells them not to worry about it. One adventurer thanks them for the food and everyone starts eating. The merchant girl enthusiastically declares the clams are so good, huge, and satisfying to eat. She says the sauce and broth are a perfect match, and someone mentions more are ready. A large pot displays clams steamed in wine. Florentina's brother tells her that of course she can eat some too, and there's a close-up of someone picking up a clam. Florentina thinks about the small but plump meat and that broth. She tastes one and notes that when she bites down, the flavor spreads along with the aroma of the wine. Both the big ones and the small ones are wonderful, and she declares it exquisite. Suddenly, an instructor recognizes Florentina and greets her. Someone presents two beautiful cherry blossom shells to pay for the meal they received, and Florentina's brother examines them, commenting that they picked up a mighty fine cherry shell. Florentina reacts with surprise at seeing the quality of the shells. The group starts discussing whether the cherry shells are popular enough for resale, but someone confirms they aren't particularly in demand. Then another person mentions they might be love charms, which leaves Florentina looking pretty puzzled at the suggestion. Someone explains they once took cherry shells to the guild along with other materials, but the guild straight up refused to buy plain shells without magical properties. Florentina agrees, noting that to someone who doesn't believe in love charms, the shells are essentially worthless. The conversation shifts to trading practices. Someone points out that if Sogo were there, he'd force a purchase even if the buyer didn't want the items. Another person references how Sogo wouldn't buy butchered meat from them. Meanwhile, someone enthusiastically asks to buy Thunder Bear meat instead, but a third adventurer declares he's eating all his meat himself and won't sell any. Florentina's brother says he'll look into the matter and asks for details later. The dungeon merchant girl reflects on how unusual it is for a guild to refuse purchasing materials like livers, driftwood, and popular shells that people actually want. The brother considers the cherry shell's reputation as a love charm. He says if it really can make love come true, he wants to give it to an acquaintance who's having a hard time. Someone offers to trade him items they have on hand for it, and the brother asks if they're sure about the deal. The other person tells him to just pay back the meal with some manual labor. Florentina offers to trade as well, but the other adventurer declines. Turns out she already gave him a bunch of items before. He adds that she helped them during the stampede, and they collected plenty of clams anyway, so he's good. Meanwhile, the dungeon merchant girl considers what to do with her shell. She thinks selling it feels wrong and wonders if she should give it to someone too. Her second cousin is around the age where a love charm might be useful. She admits to herself that she doesn't really have a buyer for it anyway, and she's not particularly interested in romance herself. Then, a narration box explains that the value of an object changes greatly depending on the time and place. An illustration shows a beautiful clam with a pearl. Someone suggests maybe they should give the cherry shell to the dungeon merchant girl as thanks for the coffee. Florentina holds up the shell and contemplates whether it's selfish of her to want this treasure to end up in the hands of someone who understands its worth. She reflects that just as coffee she can drink in a dungeon is valuable to her, an item's worth can grow through people's feelings or be swayed by luck. The brother says good for them. The merchant girl gets excited about receiving an additional item, and Florentina declares that at the very least, delicious food should go to someone who can truly enjoy it. At a tea party hosted by the Crown Prince, who's currently in the middle of his matchmaking activities, Florentina announces she's acquired something rare and would like to share it with everyone. The scene shows various nobles gathered at the elegant event, and someone comments that the prince is in an incredibly good mood. Then the conversation turns to the cherry blossom shells they traded yesterday. Florentina's brother explains that since the prince adjusted his schedule for him, he thought the shells might make for good conversation, so he gave them to him as a gift. Florentina's father reacts with shock, but Florentina simply confirms what happened. She clenches her fist and tells her father that if he's going to give her to someone, he should at least pick the right person. Her father dramatically yells back, asking what she wants in exchange: money, magic items, territory, status, or even the throne. Florentina panics, asking if it's really okay for her to have something this valuable. She stammers that the shell was a gift, then processes that it's supposed to be a love charm. Florentina explains that she was able to buy premium coffee beans directly as they were imported. The coffee's made from the finest beans harvested in a high-level dungeon in the neighboring country. Someone comments that it's certainly rare for a noble's tea party, noting that it's coffee instead of tea. Her brother holds his cup and remarks that it has such a lovely aroma, but then Florentina looks troubled. Her brother notices and asks what's wrong. Someone suggests they try it, and Florentina thinks it would pair well with the chocolate sweets too. Suddenly, the brother reacts with shock, asking if someone was actually selling coffee inside the Eno dungeon. Florentina confirms that yeah, while there are merchants who sell goods in dungeons, that's usually in high or upper mid-levels where supplies are scarce. The brother leans in intensely and asks if she's saying it was better than this premium coffee. Florentina looks concerned as the brother explains that the coffee he drank there was plenty good, even accounting for the location and timing. He feels like that kid's coffee actually tasted better. Florentina reflects that this coffee is delicious and refined, but she remembers drinking coffee in the dungeon outdoors. Later, the brother asks if Florentina is free this afternoon and she agrees. Then the brother lays out the search plan. He tells Florentina to take the perimeter of the forest and the eastern inlet, while the three other adventurers will take the forest. He'll handle the rocky areas on the west side and the safe zone. He gives additional instructions. If they run into any adventurers, they should ask if anyone has noticed anything unusual about the dungeon. Also, if they see a dungeon merchant, they should ask them to come back with them. Even if they find nothing, everyone should meet back at the rendezvous point in 3 hours. The group takes off running across the dungeon. Meanwhile, Florentina runs at high speed using her magic boots, noting there really aren't many people around during the day. At full speed, these magic boots could circle the island in less than 10 minutes, but at 20% power it'll take a little over 30 minutes. A group of adventurers spots her and suddenly reacts with surprise. One of them yells out that it's Big Sis Shinzen. Someone asks what she's doing here, and meanwhile, Florentina thinks to herself that she'll do 2 laps just to be safe. The adventurers start discussing the dungeon merchant, identifying him as the guy in the straw hat. Someone mentions they started seeing him around autumn of last year, and the group talks about how they buy snacks and water from him sometimes, though apparently none of them have ever bought the coffee. They explain how he always shows up at the perfect time when they're thirsty, like he just drifts in whenever he feels like it, coming by super irregularly. Florentina notes that he did mention he wasn't originally from this country, which makes sense. The conversation keeps going. Someone points out he said the fish here are delicious too, and another adventurer adds that he must have really taken a liking to this place. After all, the guy's been here for over 6 months now. They recall that even though he said he might move to another dungeon in about a month when they first met him, he's still hanging around. 3 hours later, time has completely flown by. The brother asks how the rest of the search went, then explains that on his end, he managed to talk to a few people but couldn't find the dungeon merchant anywhere. The group that's gathered has prepared for something else entirely. Someone announces they got a delicious recipe for great whale meat, and another person says that's good. The team celebrates having the vegetables and mushrooms all set, with the preparations apparently perfect. Someone asks if they were getting a hot pot ready. Meanwhile, the brother considers their search results. Since the merchant isn't on the beach, the only place left to look is in the forest or in the safe zone. Then the group finds a cave entrance on the south side of the island. Inside the cave, apparently the dungeon core is located there too. The brother acknowledges they understand the situation and suggests they save exploring it for next time. Suddenly, rain starts pouring down in the dungeon. Someone calls out for everyone to come over. There's a bivouac point right at the entrance of the forest where they can take shelter. Florentina arrives soaking wet and someone asks if she and the instructor are okay. The brother complains that it's not fair. The group notes their towels are safe and confirms that it really does rain inside dungeons. The brother mentions that in Sogo, the most they ever got was mist. Florentina finds it strange, but says she figured there would be dungeons where it rained too. She recalls that it always snowed back at her great uncle's place. The atmosphere shifts completely. Just moments ago it was nothing but the sound of waves and the smell of the tide, but now all they can hear is the rain and the smell of the earth. Florentina admits she kind of likes moments like this. Meanwhile, someone wonders if they have enough tea leaves, noting water aside. Florentina says she'll boil some water and make some tea, and the group sits together as rain pours down outside. Someone asks why it had to start pouring so suddenly, as the group reacts to the unexpected downpour. Then the dungeon merchant girl appears, also soaking wet, and asks if they're taking shelter from the rain too. The brother and Florentina react with surprise. Under the rain, the brother mentions that the merchant actually had people to party up with. He clarifies that whenever he saw her, she was always alone. The merchant admits he's not wrong about that, but someone points out that the brother's sister is a solo player to the core. The brother asks the merchant to show her guild card just in case. He notices there's no name written on it, though it looks like the sales permit was issued in their country. He asks if she's from the kingdom of Gaspard. The merchant confirms she's from Gaspard, explains that after her stepfather passed away, she came to this country on a friend's recommendation. Meanwhile, the brother notices there are guild cards without names on them, and someone asks what her name is then. The merchant introduces herself as Idia P. Honor. The brother realizes that with a foreign guild card, nobody noticed because she was active, then tries to ask what his sister's name is. He also mentions they need to contact the capital's chairman and the guildmaster in Sogo for now. along with the crown prince, because after all, everyone knows of their existence through myths and legends, but no one ever thought they'd actually meet one. The brother reflects that his sister seems to be especially close with them, wonders if they've realized. Idia prepares coffee, grinding the beans and pouring hot water over them. She brings out a tray loaded with multiple cups and a plate of cookies, apologizing for making everyone wait. She explains she's serving 2 cups of today's recommended black blend and 3 café au lates, telling the group to have some sweets to go with the drinks. The brother comments on the lovely aroma as everyone settles around the table. Meanwhile, even Idia herself seems surprised and impressed by how the coffee service turned out. The group starts tasting the coffee. Idia loves the sweet flavor, while the others are pleasantly surprised, noting the coffee is actually delicious despite expecting it to be really bitter. The brother agrees it's good, though he points out it lacks refinement. Florentina holds her cup, thinking about how the coffee smells amazing even against the smell of the tide and rain. She remembers the expensive coffee the crown prince brewed for her was delicious too. Then the brother notices something and asks if it's a Sakurai shell. Florentina asks if someone like her really deserves this, thanking Idia for the gift. Idia beams with joy and calls Florentina big sister, clearly delighted by the reaction. Florentina promises to treasure it. The group continues enjoying the coffee, and someone remarks that it really is the coffee she brews. When someone asks for a refill, Idia reminds them that refills are on their own dime. The brother proudly declares this is the best coffee he can say he's had. Then the scene shifts dramatically. The day of Florentina's meeting with the crown prince finally arrives. She's accompanying him on his matchmaking summer retreat, while fully enjoying the Eno dungeon on the side. 6 days have already passed, and Florentina stands there in an elegant dress with a maid adjusting her outfit, wearing an ornate necklace. The crown prince greets her but immediately apologizes. He tells Lady Tremel that urgent business has come up, so they should just say this meeting never happened, even though she went to such trouble to make time for him. Florentina acknowledges his apology but admits she knows this is incredibly bold of her, yet she has one more request. The brother points out it may be inconvenient for a man to go alone, and the maid asks if that guild doesn't deal mostly in women's goods. Meanwhile, Roman stands there sweating nervously. Turns out Florentina was wondering if he might accompany Roman. The crown prince explains that Mr. Jailer, whom he introduced earlier, is about to head to the Sheila's Guild in the commercial district for an inspection, and he would like Miss Tremel to act as Roman's partner. The crown prince internally panics, thinking there's no way she won't refuse. He realizes telling her to scrap the marriage interview just to play another guy's lover is way too much to ask. Meanwhile, Roman can't believe what he's hearing, wondering what on earth his sister is thinking and if she's actually for real. The group reacts as someone asks if it's really okay. But Florentina's already mentally planning her shopping trip, noting the Sheila's company is the place that sells those cosmetics. She realizes they were almost out of mana potions and fire starters, plus low-grade magic stones and seasoning. She also needs to grab a bunch of souvenirs and wonders if she should pick up a bottle just in case. Then Roman and the crown prince just stand there, realizing the truth, she's only thinking about her own shopping. Later, Florentina and her brother walk through town carrying a basket of bread. The brother apologizes to Florentina, mentioning how she finally had a chance to become the crown princess. Florentina responds with mild confusion. The brother explains that the crown prince actually rejected Florentina at an arranged marriage. Meeting quite a while back, turns out the prince had said Lady Tremel was pretty charming, but he just didn't feel any spark of destiny with her. Like he got rejected flat out, and the brother's totally shocked by this whole revelation. Florentina clarifies that she's only filling in for the lady who canceled last minute, pointing out there were plenty of other people they could have picked instead. She hasn't told her parents about any of this because she doesn't want them pushing another marriage proposal on her, and the brother starts realizing his old man forcing him into this whole situation is actually pretty reckless. Florentina asks the brother to do a good job accompanying the crown prince on his summer retreat, promising she'll make sure he gets properly compensated. She tells him he's the only hero she can turn to right now. The brother seriously can't believe what he's hearing. Then the brother asks if Florentina finally decided to get married and whether the crown prince is even her type. Florentina firmly says no way, explaining she was just thinking about who she's gonna give a piece of her mind to when she gets back home. Meanwhile, the scene shifts over to the Sila's Trading Company building. Inside the shop, accessories and jewelry are displayed all beautifully arranged. A staff member explains these are their best-selling items. Everything's made using materials sourced straight from the dungeon. Materials gathered from beachcombing can be turned into accessories just like these. The cosmetic oil turns out to be the most popular item among the ladies. Roman presents it to Florentina, who cheerfully decides she'll make this the souvenir for the women. Roman laughs when he notices the ingredients are shark liver, Apparently, the product was originally developed at the request of an adventurer who's close with their alchemist. Someone mentions that image strategy is also important, and they'll explain it properly if asked. Florentina plans to get it for her great aunt, guards older sister's maids, and the people at school and the teachers. Then Florentina realizes she'll have to buy separate ones for her mom and grandma, since they don't put the stuff for nobles out on the shelves. Again, this product was developed about a year ago by an adventurer close to their alchemist. Florentina mentions she can't afford anything too expensive. The brother offers to treat her to something as a thank you since she's here. They can part ways here after this. So they walk together carrying shopping bags. The brother notes the price is around the same as that high-end makeup from earlier. They continue walking with their shopping. The scene opens up on a dried fish store exterior, awnings stretched out over displays packed with goods. Florentina says she wants to go shopping at the dried fish store, and Roman's face immediately shows his reaction to this whole request. A shopkeeper wearing a headband welcomes them into the dried fish store with open arms. Roman and the brother comment that securing preserved food is pretty important, noting she's his sister after all, so it makes sense. Inside the shop, dried fish are hanging from the ceiling and jars line the shelves everywhere. The shopkeeper explains they've got fish caught nearby, seaweed, shrimp, and shellfish stuff for eating, broth, and even medicine. They've got it all, though he mentions they don't have any dungeon-sourced goods there. Then the brother gestures toward the back, mentioning there's a kitchen tucked behind the counter. He suggests Florentina should have a taste first before buying anything. 2 glasses of broth are shown on the counter, explained to be a combined broth of bonito and kelp. Everyone tastes the broth samples at the dried fish store, and the shopkeeper explains that all someone has to do is put the dashi powder and some vegetables in a pot to make a delicious stew in no time. He also recommends his secret blend of dashi powder made with shellfish and shrimp mixed together. The shopkeeper mentions they can even grill and eat what they buy right here on the spot. If they grill the dried fish, it'll be plump and juicy. He adds that the dried fish in the back is specifically for eating since it's been salted and dried, so it keeps for a long time without spoiling. The shopkeeper thanks them for the business. Roman tells Florentina to pick whatever she likes, but only as much as she can finish. Florentina looks excited about the selection. Then the shopkeeper explains that lately dungeon-grown shark and shellfish have suddenly become way more common. The prices are still high, but the rich folks eat nothing but that stuff. Because of that, regular seafood hasn't been selling well, so a good amount ends up being turned into processed goods like the dried fish. Roman asks when this shift happened. Florentina thinks for a moment and says about a year ago. Apparently there was this deficiency crisis where dozens of people ended up with mana issues and the hospitals were in a total frenzy. Meanwhile, the shopkeeper cheerfully serves up an order of grilled dried katana horse mackerel on a plate. Florentina compliments her brother on being good at using the Eastern chopsticks to pick the meat. Spoons and forks make it pretty hard to eat this type of fish. Florentina takes a bite and her face just lights up with absolute delight at the taste. She declares it's delicious. The saltiness is subtle but packed with savory umami, and most importantly, unlike jerky, the meat is actually tender. Meanwhile, Roman looks completely stunned, thinking to himself about achieving this level of flavor with ingredients that contain literally no mana. Then someone mentions the meat that her brother shredded for them, and Roman's face shows this dramatic realization as the narration states the true essence of their cooking starts now. The cooking process begins. They pour on plenty of that broth from earlier, add condiments like green onions and sesame seeds, and place it over some Eastern rice. The completed dish is announced as horse mackerel dashi chaizu, and the beautiful bowl shows rice with shredded fish in aromatic broth. Roman asks if there's actual tea in it, and Idia questions the tea part too. Someone explains it's just the broth, though apparently they add tea in the East. Florentina asks if it's like a simple risotto and takes a taste. Her eyes go wide with amazement at the flavor. The shopkeeper describes how the soft rice and fish meat go down smooth with that savory aromatic broth, then asks if it makes her want to just slurp it all down. Roman mutters something about whether that's okay for a noble lady as Florentina enthusiastically slurps from the bowl. Then the shopkeeper apologizes that they don't sell rice there. Roman immediately jumps in saying he's buying it first, but Florentina insists they need to buy the rice too, and that Roman's not allowed to claim it first. The shopkeeper directs them to the import shop on the main street where they sell rice. Florentina reacts with surprise as the shopkeeper thanks them very much for their business. On the street, Florentina and Idia end up running into the female instructor. The instructor greets them warmly, mentioning it's been a long time since they've seen each other. She explains she's actually here to meet with the I-rank official and Florentina for their evaluation. Florentina greets her back pretty cheerful about the whole thing. The instructor asks if the two of them are out shopping together. Idia confirms they are as Florentina happily calls out her name. So they head to this specialty coffee shop, where a male shopkeeper with a hair bun explains the store carries a wide variety of imported beans. He recognizes the instructor as a regular customer who always buys a particular blend. Florentina excitedly calls out Idia's name again. Then Idia explains that since Florentina and her brother bought coffee for her earlier, she wanted to restock what she used up, and the instructor offered to come along with her. But suddenly, the guildmaster appears in a complete rage, demanding to know why the instructor is wandering around without permission. Someone nearby reacts to the guildmaster's arrival. The guildmaster berates the instructor for taking Idia out on his own, then tells him to shut up since he has no idea what's happening in the dungeon right now. Florentina tries to intervene, asking the guildmaster to at least hear him out, but someone else orders the instructor to get back to the dungeon immediately. Then the guildmaster punches the instructor across the face, calling him an incompetent fool. The injured instructor holds his face while the guildmaster continues his tirade, declaring that people like the instructor could easily be replaced since he's the younger brother of the local lord. Someone calls out to the guildmaster, trying to calm the situation. Meanwhile, Florentina asks calmly if a stampede is occurring, and the guildmaster reacts with surprise. Suddenly, Idia quickly apologizes for causing trouble, saying she'll ask someone else to buy the coffee beans for her and promises to head back to the dungeon right away. Idia tells Florentina she'll brew some delicious coffee for her next time and says she'll see her back in the dungeon. Then Roman apologizes to both women. As Idia and Roman walk away, Florentina and the instructor just stand there watching them leave, and Florentina's expression gets all serious and contemplative. Meanwhile, Florentina starts reflecting on her whole situation. Her hobby is solo dungeoneering, right? She thinks she should be happy about that path, and yet something feels wrong. Hearing Idia promise to see her again in the dungeon actually gave her something to look forward to, which is weird because she's always liked entering dungeons alone to do things her own way. But then Florentina realizes she absolutely hates this feeling. It's like something inside her is gradually shriveling up. She remembers how they spent the day shopping and eating delicious food together, and honestly it was genuinely fun. But since they didn't actually enter the dungeon today, something feels incomplete. The female instructor approaches and asks if Florentina would accompany her for the rest of today's plans. Florentina apologizes and declines. To protect Idia's smile against the suspicious dungeon management, action needs to be taken. Someone reviews the dungeon's scheduling papers. The plans were originally scheduled for the final day, but it seems better to move them up. Meanwhile, back on the street, someone calls out to Florentina as their regular sis. The group is traveling together with Idia pulling this massive cart loaded with supplies. Adventurers near her comment on what a haul they've gathered. Then Idia tells Abel they need to hurry up since the buyers won't purchase anything that isn't fresh. Without a magic bag, they have to head back immediately unless they've got a ton of ice. Another adventurer mentions that Sogo lends out magic bags for low rankers though. The male adventurer explains that's a paid rental and far from high performance, but the reason is because the distance to Sogo is so ridiculously long. Suddenly, someone reacts with surprise about an audit. The male adventurer with the headband notes he thought both his sister and the instructor had plans today. But then a hand holds up this official document with royal seals. The voice explains this is an official order from the royal family and the association headquarters in the capital. The Dungeon and the Dungeon Management Guild will now be subject to an audit. The guild officials react with shock. One of them stammers, asking if they seriously have a problem with an appointment letter written by the Crown Prince himself. Turns out the beginner dungeon guild of the royal capital is getting audited, and the officials are clearly caught off guard, explaining that they've issued warnings to adventurers not to enter since the dungeon is currently in an unstable state. But Florentina immediately points out the obvious. If the dungeon's so unstable that they're issuing warnings, shouldn't they be investigating what's causing it, or at least tracking how many adventurers actually entered? Instead, these guys are just sitting around reading and chatting instead of doing their jobs and entering the dungeon themselves. One of them reacts nervously to her sharp observation, clearly uncomfortable. The male official tries to deflect, asking if she's participating in the audit too. Someone mutters that she must be the newbie sis, while another person wonders if she's actually a guild employee instead of an adventurer. Roman steps in to clarify she is a bona fide adventurer who'll be acting as his bodyguard during the audit, and he also mentions the three others standing over there. Someone reacts with surprise, like this is the first time they're hearing about any of this. Meanwhile, Idia and Florentina look visibly relieved with sparkles around them. They'd been thinking Roman was some guild bigwig this whole time when they were talking to him so casually earlier. But then Roman reminds them that Florentina is someone they'd regret talking casually to way more than any guild bigwig, since she's actually the daughter of a count. The discussion shifts to the kid in the straw hat they passed near the safe zone on their way back. Someone asks if the leader said anything. The response is negative since he's taking his sweet time. Then someone comments that even though there hasn't been a stampede in years, the situation is still pretty concerning. Florentina asks if they see him to give him her regards. Meanwhile, the male adventurer thinks he's probably still in the dungeon. The narration reflects on Florentina's situation. Her hobby is solo dungeoneering. She can enter dungeons whenever she pleases and enjoy them however she likes. But the only reason anyone can do that is because the management guild keeps the dungeons in a stable state. Moving on, the group walks down the stairs as they discuss the situation. Turns out there was an anonymous report of mismanagement sent to Association HQ in the royal capital, so an auditor was sent to Sogo with royal approval. It was planned to be an audit from the very beginning. The conversation turns to the guildmaster. Compared to Sogo's guildmaster, the one in Ino is so stuck up. The guildmaster is a big deal after all. To be precise, their guildmaster is on loan from Association HQ, and apparently his work still isn't finished. Suddenly, someone mentions Instructor Roman is coming, and another person suggests they should just give up already. The discussion gets way more detailed about noble politics and dungeon management. So for a lord, dungeon management is actually a major factor in how their domain gets evaluated, since they're basically managing it with the roof of their house on the line. Reputation is everything to these nobles, so appointing relatives to high-ranking guild positions to boost that reputation is pretty common. The guildmaster mentioned he was the lord's younger brother, so it was most likely one of those lord appointments. Then someone points out that while some nobles enter political marriages to become relatives, some even go as far as adopting people who are skilled at dungeon management. Florentina complains that nobles have to deal with all that drama, and at the end of it all they get a noble daughter who loves solo dungeoneering. Meanwhile, the group continues walking through the dungeon as the explanation keeps going. Turns out dungeon abnormalities aren't just stampedes, there's the fluctuation of monster numbers and the birth of mutations to worry about. The appearance of treasure chests and the presence of migrant beasts or even migrant humans also play a big role. Someone asks if it's really mismanagement since a stampede hasn't actually happened yet, but someone explains that situations even worse than an abnormal outbreak can occur. One wrong move, even in a beginner dungeon, can lead to total disaster. They have a duty to report any major changes to the country after all. Eventually, the group reaches the dungeon core chamber. A male adventurer checks his detection tools and confirms they're functioning properly, no contamination or noticeable activation. The massive dungeon core of the Eno dungeon sits before them. Suddenly, Florentina catches the smell of coffee in the air. Florentina examines the area and finds coffee, books, a pot and traces of a campfire, suddenly realizing that girl has been living here. The tent is kept clean, but it was installed quite a long time ago, and they find furniture and other supplies set up inside. Then her brother recognizes Idia's carrying rack since she was wearing it when they met earlier that afternoon. Someone calls out to Big Sis and the instructor to look at something, and the realization hits them. He wasn't in the safe zone after all. Florentina wonders if the unstable conditions referred to the weather. Meanwhile, the wind has picked up again and it's getting dark, the waves turning brutal. Suddenly, someone with glasses notices a sound coming from outside the cave. The group reacts to the noise. One adventurer points toward the sea in the back, and someone hears a weird noise mixed in with the wind. The others tell him not to say creepy stuff like that, but they look out toward the water and see something really big approaching. Then two massive sea creatures emerge from the ocean. The leviathans break through the waves with tremendous force, their enormous bodies creating chaos in the water. The adventurers react in shock. One of them yells out, asking what that giant monster even is. Someone else identifies it as a leviathan, the highest-ranking monster in this entire dungeon, and there are two of them. Another adventurer explains that it's a leviathan that came all the way here to feed on the monsters in the shallows, and the wind turbulence everyone's feeling is actually caused by their magic. Meanwhile, Florentina's brother asks if she can handle the signal flare. She quickly prepares the evacuation signal flare. Firing it will signal their intent to retreat and simultaneously serve as an evacuation warning to the other adventurers in the area. Suddenly, signal flares other than Florentina's start going up too. The other adventurers have noticed the Leviathan as well. The group decides to retreat to the safe zone for now. Two adventurers start discussing the situation. One of them questions why the strong monsters aren't staying out at sea like they were told they would. The response is pretty grim. They multiplied too much, and now there isn't enough food to go around. The explanation continues about the dungeon's ecosystem. Offshore, adventurers moved their bases elsewhere and never returned, but it seems the adventurers strong enough to fish offshore moved away. The Eno dungeon suffered from poor catches for a while, but after receiving a certain blessing, the monster population surged and made it bountiful again. As a result, the dungeon's balance is collapsing in the form of an increase in apex species. Adventurers hunt the low-level monsters around the island, but the high-level ones offshore just keep multiplying due to the blessing. Someone explains that in numbers like these, contaminated and mutated leviathans will appear, and if a stampede happens under these conditions, the monsters will be flooding out of the dungeon in no time. Florentina realizes even worse could happen. Then the instructor spots something and yells for everyone to look over there. The group notices someone at the end of the pier extending into the rough ocean waters. The adventurers rush toward the pier. Florentina's brother calls out, asking why she's in the dungeon. Someone tells her to get to a safe zone right now. Another voice shouts that she can't be here. At the end of the pier stands Idia, frozen in fear as an enormous leviathan erupts from the water behind her, its massive jaws wide open. Florentina's brother yells to her that the weak point is the eyes and asks if she can hit it. Florentina responds for him to just do it, then tells everyone that's how it is, so they should give up on the rank exam. Meanwhile, the other adventurers panic and yell for someone to do something, though one admits he can't. Florentina draws her bow with intense focus while her brother readies his chain weapon behind her, the leviathan's massive head looming right before them. Then someone yells for Idia to get over there quick, and the water erupts violently as another voice shouts that it's coming out again. But Idia just stands there paralyzed on the pier, her face showing pure terror as the leviathan crashes through the water near the destroyed section. The leviathan's attack completely obliterates the pier debris and wooden planks exploding into the air as Idia gets thrown upward from the destruction, tumbling through the air before splashing down into the churning water below. The adventurers react in horror, someone calling out Idia's name while another yells about the pier being destroyed. The adventurers check their equipment. One mentions having a rifle, another's got a magic bag and pouch, and a third one has a coat and flare gun. Someone notes this is literally all they have to work with. Then Florentina's brother yells out to his sister. In this massive dramatic panel, Florentina straight up dives into the violent waters, heading directly for the spot where Idia went under. Meanwhile, at the guild meeting, someone reports that Leviathan is eating sharks around the island. Another adventurer yells that it's actually Leviathan and this is seriously bad news. The instructor curses and calls Idia a bastard while explaining how the situation just keeps getting worse. High above in the dungeon waters, the massive Leviathan tears through the ocean with its enormous jaws, debris, and wreckage falling all around the creature. But back to Idia, she plunges into the water after the pier's destruction. As she sinks deeper into the dark ocean, memories start flooding back. An older man lies on his deathbed surrounded by others. He tells Idia she makes great coffee and maybe she'll take over after him. Then he instructs her to go to the land across the sea where the hero lives, and when he dies, to leave the country without letting them find out. He reassures her that if it's her, she'll be fine someday for sure. Florentina swims through the underwater depths and spots Idia. She's glad they found her so quickly. Florentina decides to boost the output of her magic boots and head out over the sea, while multiple leviathans circle in the dark waters around them as she and her brother move to rescue Idia. Florentina grabs hold of Idia and positions herself against one of the massive leviathans, using the creature's body as a foothold. She can feel it pulling her straight up toward the surface. But even with the magic boots, she's getting swept away by the other leviathan's water current spell. Her brother watches nearby as Florentina executes the dangerous maneuver with both leviathans surrounding them. The force of the leviathan's movement batters them through the water. Florentina struggles, noting the impact wasn't that bad but she can't breathe. Then she realizes it's a deep cut. Her brother reaches desperately toward them and calls out to his sister, begging her to at least save Idia. Florentina's brother screams that they can't die, when suddenly a protective barrier of magical black spheres forms around Florentina and Idia as they drift through the water. Meanwhile, a massive whirlpool erupts in the dungeon ocean. Florentina's brother screams for his sister and Idia. Someone yells asking what the hell this whirlpool is and if it's Leviathan's magic. The adventurers on shore watch in confusion as the disturbance appears to be chasing something. Then one adventurer notices both Leviathans are moving away. Someone screams that Leviathan is here. The group observes the massive fin cutting through the water's surface as it disappears into the distance. Florentina rides on top of the massive orca as it explodes through the water surface, spray flying everywhere. The creature surges forward with incredible force. Her brother yells for her to hold on tight, screaming for his big sis as the orca speeds through the waves. Meanwhile, the adventurers on shore watch the massive creature cutting through the water. Someone explains that it's a cross beast, something bred in the deepest floor of the southern nation's high-rank dungeon that became the strongest creature in the sea. One adventurer wonders what that new monster even is, while another one notices that it looked like the sister was clinging to it. Then Idia recognizes it. She realizes it's an orca. The explanation continues as they say it even wiped out the kraken that heroes couldn't defeat. Apparently a hero once tamed one, and when he summoned it to another high-rank dungeon, the thing dominated everything. but Florentina's brother protests that something this strong shouldn't be in Eno dungeon. Someone confirms that Idia is borrowing its form. It's the power of the first people, borrowing the form and abilities of creatures from another world. Adventurers are struggling in the water, completely exhausted and unable to reach shore as the creature keeps following them. One of them screams in desperation. Meanwhile, Idia in her orca form continues pursuing them, with various creatures and power swirling around her silhouette. Someone points out that's that kid's ability, the power of the first people. Then Florentina's brother notes that the one inside is Idia, so the combat power of a single individual isn't that high. But someone argues that orcas are supposed to be the strongest in the sea, questioning why she just keeps running away. The brother explains that orcas are strong because they hunt in pods. He looks through his telescope and says there's no problem. The adventurers rally together, declaring they'll just hunt, and they'll hunt in groups too. Someone yells for everyone to give it their all, doesn't matter if they're a newbie or just some kid, this is a Leviathan hunt. Meanwhile, the brother asks if his big sis left almost all her stuff behind. Someone confirms that's right. Then an adventurer suggests using those monsters swimming ahead to steer the Leviathan, wanting to drive it into the inlet where there's way more footing. The creatures are basically luring them in that direction. The orca speeds through the water with Florentina and Idia riding on top. But Idia starts worrying that at this rate, the Leviathans are gonna catch up to them. Because Florentina's here with her, she can't dive deep or pick up any real speed. Someone screams that the Leviathans are still chasing them down. Suddenly, the brother calls out to Idia, asking if she can hear him. He tells her to jump once if she can hear him, then yells for his sis to hold on tight. The orca's fin cuts through the water as the brother yells that they're taking off. Then the orca launches into the air in a spectacular breach, and one of the adventurers exclaims that it really flew. Someone explains that orcas have really good hearing. Apparently the hero who defeated the Kraken used some kind of magic device that emits sound waves underwater to train orcas. Meanwhile, the brother starts giving urgent commands through the communication device, telling Idia to head straight for the cove on the west side of the island, to swim at full speed and shake off Leviathan. One of the adventurers questions whether it's okay for him to use his sister's communication magic device without permission, pointing out that it's crazy expensive. The brother just yells back that if it breaks, he's billing the repair cost to the guild. Meanwhile, Florentina's clinging to the orca's back as it speeds through the water, telling Idia that she can't get any speed unless she dives in, but then she won't be able to breathe. Her brother responds through the communication device, telling Idia not to worry about his sister. Then he points out what Idia has riding on her back. The scene shifts to show Florentina's face in close-up, grinning wide despite the danger. Meanwhile, her brother's voice continues, saying she's a gutsy regular sister who enjoys coffee even in a dangerous dungeon. A small flashback shows young Florentina and Idia together in the dungeon. The brother yells for Idia to take a breath, and Florentina calls out that she's diving. The orca plunges beneath the surface with Florentina holding on. The two Leviathans follow them down into the depths, their massive forms cutting through the water. Back on shore, the adventurers observe the chase. One of them picks up speed while the other slows down, just as expected. Since Idia sped up, one of the Leviathans switched to observing mode. Someone yells for everyone to hurry to the cove while they can. The brother gives urgent instructions through the device. When they enter the inlet, Idia needs to slow down and pull the Leviathan in as close as possible, and out of the 3 piers, she should dive under the first 2. Then the orca launches high into the air in a massive leap, as the command echoes to jump as high as possible. Meanwhile, the Leviathan pursues them toward the pier structures, and adventurers start yelling that it's coming and going under the pier. The pier itself starts shaking from the massive creature passing beneath as they call out instructions for the last one, the 3rd pier. Suddenly, the Leviathan explodes upward between the piers in a spectacular breach, water cascading everywhere. The orca with Florentina is visible in the distance, while adventurers line the wooden structures on both sides. Someone screams the command now. The massive creature crashes down into the prepared nets, the trap springs, and the Leviathan becomes entangled in the webbing stretched across the cove. The Leviathan thrashes violently in the nets, its enormous body straining against the restraints. The webbing holds, but the creature's movements are causing absolute chaos. Adventurers desperately work to hold the nets as someone calls for Frank while others yell for Big Sis. The group responds, calling out to hold it tight and keep it steady. They can't let this thing break free and escape back into the sea. Hands grip the net ropes with white-knuckled intensity as everyone struggles to contain the legendary monster. Then Florentina strikes with her extended weapon, driving the spear point directly into the Leviathan's eye. Her face is intense and focused, soaking wet from the ocean water. She calls out that she destroyed both eyes, explaining that the eyes are the core of Leviathan's magic control. Right now its scale protection spell should be undone. The adventurers below can see her successful strike against the creature's weak point. Florentina's brother calls out just like he taught her, the command echoes to aim for the temple. From point-blank range, Florentina drives her spear straight into the Leviathan's skull. Brain destruction. The weapon pierces deep into the creature's head, the critical hit landing perfectly. Meanwhile, below them, the other adventurers coordinate their attacks on the netted Leviathan, striking at multiple vital points while the thing's restrained. The assault continues with guild destruction as multiple adventurers target the Leviathan's breathing organs, weapons slashing and piercing through the vulnerable gill structures. Then Florentina's brother yells that now comes the finale. An adventurer grips their weapon tight and strikes. Spine destruction. The coordinated team drives their attacks into the Leviathan's spinal column, hitting all three critical weak points in succession. The Leviathan thrashes hard in the nets as adventurers hold their positions on the piers. Meanwhile, the bald instructor with sunglasses observes that it was a flawless nerve kill. Then another adventurer questions whether they really needed the two attacks after Florentina's initial strike. Someone responds that the taste and how long the meat keeps are totally different depending on the method. Down by the water, an adventurer struggles and yells for someone to give him a hand. Meanwhile, others report that the other Leviathan that was at the mouth of the cove is heading out to sea too. They decide not to chase it too far and to try again another day. Suddenly, a woman desperately calls to be pulled up quickly. The man with the giraffe pattern headband panics, explaining he's got prosthetic legs on. It's like huge weights are strapped to both his legs. Someone observes that the guy from the guild is sinking fast. Underwater, bubbles rise through the depths. Florentina sinks with the struggling adventurers, realizing they need to get back to the surface somehow. She wonders where Idia is. Her magic boots aren't working, and she can't haul everyone up with her strength alone. Idia surfaces beside the pier in her orca form, and up on the rocks, Florentina and her brother are visible in the background. Then a memory surfaces long ago, when this world had only just been born. There were nothing but gems scattered everywhere and the first being in the world. A flashback shows two young figures reading together, learning the old stories. The flashback continues, revealing how the world gave each gem a name, and the first one scooped up the gems gently with both hands. That's how they picked up all the jewels. One young voice marvels at what a beautiful stone it is, but a dark eye watches from the shadows. Back in the present, Idia as the massive orca launches from the water with Florentina and her brother on her back. The adventurers on the pier react in shock to the enormous form. Someone recognizes that this kid is something more. Meanwhile, others call out not to attack, that it's not an enemy. Voices shout for Sis and the instructor, reacting to the huge hand that suddenly appears. The massive orca form of Idia launches through the air with tremendous force, throwing people in all directions as they scramble to get clear. Someone explains that Idia overdid it with the transformation and completely ran out of strength. Meanwhile, the dark-haired brother and blonde adventurer react in shock, recognizing that this huge creature thrashing around is also Idia. Someone calls out for help urgently, but another voice responds that this outcome is actually good. Then the scene shifts to the ocean surface where massive circular ripples spread across the water near the pier, the waves rocking everything nearby. Someone desperately calls out for Sis. Suddenly, a memory surfaces. A figure in a hat stands by a door near a gravestone, speaking directly to Idia with a serious tone. The voice tells her to listen carefully, instructing that if they die, Idia must leave this country immediately. The memory continues as the voice says that someday surely, not as one of the people of the beginning, things will change. But then Idia appears cheerfully holding coffee, commenting on how delicious the coffee she makes is with that innocent smile of hers. A large silhouette of Idia's face reassures that Idia will be fine, always has been. A gravestone stands in the background, silent and still. Back in the present, Florentina sits alone on what appears to be part of a boat or platform, holding her weapon in a quiet, contemplative moment. The memory echoes again. Someone tells Idia that she'll meet them, someone who truly needs her. Florentina looks down at her weapon, taking in these words. Meanwhile, on the surface, someone explains they managed to take down the Leviathan that chased them, but the other one escaped out to sea. Someone tells them not to worry. Then another voice asks about everyone else and what happened to Leviathan, calling out to Sis with concern. Suddenly, the man with the giraffe pattern headband screams about his leg. He's sitting on the pier with other adventurers around him, his prosthetic leg clearly damaged or missing. Idia, in her dark form, apologizes repeatedly, saying it's her fault and that she's so sorry. But someone reassures that everyone's fine except for Sis, and that it's actually okay since they've had a prosthetic leg from the start and didn't have it before anyway. Florentina's brother looks frustrated and remarks that so that's how it is. Someone says they're sorry they couldn't make it happen. Apparently the guildmaster told them they should watch over and drive away the Leviathan that multiplied because of them. Idia's dark form reflects on the situation, She admits that in the end, she's just not meant to do what she wanted. But she can't stay away from the dungeon no matter what she does, since she's one of the first people after all. What she really wanted was to go around to different places and have lots of people enjoy her coffee and someday open a shop like her father-in-law. That was her dream. Florentina reaches toward Idia as she speaks. Florentina looks at Idia seriously and tells her not to neglect doing what she loves, she has to cherish it properly. Florentina holds Idia's dark form close as she speaks these words. Then Florentina explains her own feelings. She goes into the dungeon because she loves it and because it's fun, she explores, she hunts, she loves camping and doing things like that. Idia listens as Florentina continues, saying she thinks she values the time she spends doing what she loves. Florentina admits she doesn't know why she can't stay away from the dungeon, but she's found something new that she loves. That's why she came to the Eno dungeon. She shows Idia coins or tokens in her hand, telling her she doesn't want Idia to give up on that dream. Suddenly, Idia in her dark form recommends their usual coffee. Florentina says she'll have black. Meanwhile, the group on the ground discusses their orders. Florentina's brother says he'll have the same, while someone else wants café au lait. Another person says they'll have that too, and someone else mentions trying the black one. The brother says if it's Idia making it, he'll be fine. Idia's dark form is moved to tears and thanks them. Florentina tells her that she makes delicious coffee. The scene then shows the massive Leviathan corpse laid out on the pier with adventurers working around it. The brother mentions it's a shame his sister headed back to the capital yesterday. She said she had other plans, and he really wanted to let her taste the coffee. Meanwhile, a hooded adventurer announces they've finally made it to the meat section of the Leviathan's disassembly. Then the conversation shifts to guild problems. Someone notes that since coming to Eno, they haven't seen anyone from the guild enter the dungeon they caught such a big one and not a single guild person even showed up. Another adventurer points out the previous guild members used to help with fishing too, and that the old staff members often came by to check things out. Suddenly, someone demands the guildmaster provide a satisfactory explanation and asks if he understands what'll happen if he can't. Back in the guild office, the brother stands there with documents and says most of it has already been investigated. He explains the timeline 2 years ago. The guildmaster who'd been serving there for years passed away from illness, and the lord's younger brother became the new guildmaster. From the moment he took office, there were tons of clashes with adventurers and other staff. The brother details the problems with purchasing standards for dungeon goods. They raised the so-called national recommendation standards. Drift items without any magical power are treated as trash. And when the freshness drops, they don't just lower the price, they won't even buy it at all. Someone argues that it's only natural if they want to sell high-quality dungeon goods and asks what's wrong with that. But the response is that then the adventurers here won't be able to make a living. Last spring, the guild staff who couldn't stand it anymore all quit at once the entire team just walked out together. The higher-ups fired one after another of the staff members who tried to defend the adventurers, basically cleaning house of anyone who pushed back. The only ones who remained were people buried in debt and unable to quit, or the ones without an adventurer's license basically, the people who had no other choice. Meanwhile, with the skilled adventurers and competent overseers gone, the dungeon gradually fell out of balance. Continued catches and damage began piling up due to the lack of mana flowing through the place. Someone mentions how they wish the situation had been reported to the government or the guild headquarters at that point maybe things wouldn't have gotten so bad. Then Idia appeared on the scene. Once she started frequenting the dungeon, the Eno dungeon became active again and monsters multiplied like crazy. The blessing manifested in the form of abundant catches, and the guild members quickly realized that this girl has that kind of power, the kind that changes everything. Later, Idia in her dark form sits on a crystal formation inside the dungeon and explains the nature of the people of the beginning. They're beings loved by the dungeon itself. Just by being inside, monsters and mana increase naturally. There have even been reports of treasure chests appearing and many travelers and beasts being discovered throughout the area. But here's the thing, because of this power, many have thought to bind the people of the beginning to the dungeon, like keeping them trapped there. Someone points out that keeping Idia from leaving means no one gets hurt, right? They add that the guild told her to deal with it herself, saying it's her fault the Leviathans increased in the first place. The person addresses whoever realized Idia's true nature, calling them out directly. Florentina's brother acknowledges that having Idia stay for half a year is its own kind of problem. Idia, in her dark form, nervously responds that she just thought it would cause trouble. He continues, explaining that the broken balance won't be restored just by having the people of the beginning there. Meanwhile, back in the guild office, Florentina's brother stands there with documents and addresses the guildmaster. He states that as the head of the organization that manages dungeons, the guildmaster made a serious mistake in his duties. The guildmaster demands to know if he's being removed from his position and expelled from the guild. The man with the document says he doesn't really mind either way. Then Florentina's brother reveals that if he dismissed the guildmaster over this, Idia would probably be haunted by it for life. The result of the audit is announced. Idia in her dark form sweats nervously. Florentina's brother suggests they call it mandatory guidance instead. The guildmaster reacts to the term with frustration. Someone comments seriously that it's come to this because of the guildmaster's blunders. Suddenly, the guild doors burst open with a loud crash. An official announces that starting today, the Eno Dungeon Management Guild is under occupation by the Royal Capital Adventurer Support Association. A female representative steps forward and declares that from now on, the guild will follow their orders and guidance. Someone protests about doing things without permission, but the female representative with a weapon says they can't really complain about being taken over. A male official asks Lady Tribute to keep things civil. Lady Tribute says she still has something she must discuss with the guildmaster. Someone looks shocked. Then Crown Prince Wilfried appears at the entrance. The scene shifts to evidence being presented. A statement from a young lady who was staying in town is shown along with a necklace. The statement reports witnessing the guildmaster trying to use violence against a woman in the middle of town, and someone notes that she was extremely displeased. Then the Crown Prince reveals the statement is from Lady Florentina G. Trenmel. Someone recognizes the Trenmel family name, and the Crown Prince states that the Lord said he wants to cut ties with the Guildmaster immediately. The Guildmaster kneels on the floor as the Crown Prince adds that there's no need to worry, but the Guildmaster should assume that if he quits the guild, he won't have a place anywhere. Lady Tribute tells the Guildmaster not to think he can quit just because he's reached retirement age. She and her partner announce they'll be giving him strict and complete guidance, and Lady Tribute adds that to prevent him from escaping, they'll be thorough and very attentive. Someone nervously mentions not wanting to get in trouble with labor laws. Meanwhile, people begin to move and the Crown Prince says now then, he mentions that the other reason he came here was to consult with them about something. Someone addresses Idia as Lady Idia, and she appears in her dark form with white braided hair and large white eyes against her black face. Florentina's hobby is running solo dungeons. After everything that went down at the Eno dungeon, the group has returned to the royal capital. She figured she'd camp out again at the usual Sagoda dungeon after being away for so long. Then Anchan announces from the safe zone on the lowest floor, welcoming all the ladies and gentlemen. Florentina announces that from this moment on, they're starting the Roman instructor's souvenir giveaway battle with Idia standing right behind her. But Florentina realizes she accidentally ran into some weird event. She was really hoping to just relax and enjoy herself alone, even went to the same place and everything. Looking at the table of items, she thinks most of this stuff looks familiar anyway. Meanwhile, two people hold up various local specialty products, Sheila's Trading Company's cosmetics and the dried goods shop soup stock. The main attraction though, a huge magic stone. Someone questions whether that's actually a Leviathan magic stone and if they can really treat something like that as a souvenir. Then the real prize is revealed, a sashimi boat, specifically Leviathan sashimi. Someone mentions they absolutely have to make it through this round, but they didn't make it in time for the disassembly so they couldn't get any of the meat. Since the disassembly won't be done in time, they ask if their sister can just pay cash and settle it later. Someone tells them to stop saying such nonsense and to just go home. Florentina announces the event they'll all be competing in for this prize. The guild's new merch goes on sale next week. It's a cutout of Anchan. Various adventurers start discussing the competition. Someone points out how plain it is and suggests monster hunting or magic instead. Others agree there should be more adventurer-like options, like brute fighting or something. Someone asks where all that enthusiasm from earlier went. Florentina announces that once they're ready, they can pick one souvenir they like. Someone questions if this is just a money grab and complains that anyone who messed up should please buy a new one for 3 gold. Then Florentina starts the competition. The crowd waits with anticipation. Someone tells everyone to focus, though there's honestly not much excitement. The Anchan cutout is displayed. Florentina concentrates on the Leviathan sashimi boat task. She thinks she's not that skilled, but if she thinks of it as gun maintenance, she can probably do it. Suddenly, Florentina's brother appears, asking how she's feeling. Idia cheerfully greets him, saying it's been forever since she saw her big sis. The male adventurer announces he's done and demands the magic stone be handed over. Someone mentions they bought items, and another chimes in that they did too. Meanwhile, the dark-haired female adventurer declares she's getting the most expensive cosmetics, because why not, right? Others note that as expected, support types are really good with their hands. Turns out the magic stone is just a big hunk of rock now because the ladies busted it up and drained all the mana out of it. Someone scored the shark fin and all the dried goods, while another person picks out a cute accessory and some cosmetics for their mom. Someone else notices the magic stone has practically no mana left and says they'll grab some dried fish too. Then people start reacting to the sashimi boat, absolutely amazed that in their mouth, the quality is worth 5,000 gold and it just melts on the tongue. Florentina tells her brother okay. The male adventurer says he's done too, but then someone realizes they still have souvenirs left and questions what's wrong with the situation. On the right side, her brother explains that they still have the bones and skin they got from the Leviathan, but notes the tastiest part was the fresh catch right after they cleaned it. Another adventurer points out that doesn't really count as a follow-up event. The bottom panel shows everything's basically already been packed into the magic bag. Someone announces that since the souvenirs are gone, they should wrap things up. Another person mentions the opening ads and skit section. Suddenly, Florentina discovers a stack of papers among the items. The guild announces they'll now begin the main event, the new recruits welcome party. Someone questions why there are even new recruits at this time of year. Then Idia appears in her dark form with white braided hair and introduces herself, saying it's nice to meet everyone and that she started working at the Sago Management Guild. Florentina and a female guild worker react to her presence. The Crown Prince explains that he recommended Idia work for Sagu since they couldn't just leave her in the Eno dungeon like that. Idia shares that her special skill is making coffee, and someday she'd like to serve coffee and drinks in a safe zone at the guild cafeteria. Various adventurers start discussing Idia's background. Someone questions if that kid could really be one of the first people, and worries about what might happen if the monsters get stronger. Meanwhile, others express concern about weird people showing up just for the treasure chest. Then Florentina calls out to the instructor, explaining she doesn't plan to dive into the dungeon all day every day like at Eno Dungeon. A male adventurer with a drink recalls there was once a time back in Sago when tons of the first people came by, and there was even a proper stampede which was a real mess. He explains that back then, treasure chests were just an impossible dream since neither the monsters nor the mana changed at all. But he reassures everyone it's fine. Someone announces it's time for the long-awaited social gathering menu. Another person notes that Sago being unaffected by the blessings of the first people is part of the reason for its stability. Someone comments that Idia's transformation ability was amazing, though even back then hardly anyone gathered and Sago had to help. The food is revealed to be seafood Odin made with lots of shark from the Eno dungeon. Florentina looks at the hot pot and notes it's hot, but looks so good she wants to eat it. Various adventurers start commenting on the dishes. The hampan is fluffy, the chikua is nice, and the fish flavor and aroma are packed into the broth and fish cakes. The cabbage rolls are tasty and the daikon soaked up all the flavor. Then someone mentions they catch lots of cranserpent meat over in Sogo and sometimes get ones as big as a leviathan. Another adventurer says it's the first time they've tasted something like the meat inside the cabbage, and it's really juicy. Idia confirms it's super tasty. Florentina tells Idia her sister is amazing at filleting, and she should watch her sometime, mentioning the meat can be boiled or grilled. Idia reacts with surprise about something being inside. Eventually, everyone finishes eating. One man in a giraffe headband says he's so full, and another notes it was delicious. Afterward, Idia offers Florentina coffee after her meal, asking if she'd like some. The male adventurer notes he can already drink it. Florentina responds that it's a sample coffee. Then a female guild worker calls out to her big sis. Florentina reflects that her hobby is solo dungeons, and even if she challenges a new dungeon, she always ends up coming back to the one she's used to. She looks at various dungeon pamphlets while people continue offering her coffee. A hand holds up a coffee ticket offering one free cup of favorite coffee. Florentina tells Idia she'll have her usual, and someone confirms the order. Idia mentions that's the recommended black coffee. The scene shifts to show the group interacting. Florentina met a new friend, found a new joy, and had a new experience at the dungeon. Her favorite hobby just keeps getting better as more things to love keep piling up. Idia's carrying a coffee tray while Florentina sits there with her drink, eyes closed, smiling like she's in absolute bliss. Meanwhile, with new companions joining the crew, the Sagoda dungeon becomes an even more beloved place for everyone. And honestly, it's just fun.